This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
4 days into October. Good morning, and how are you doing? On minute after 6 o'clock. Welcome to Friday. It's Friday. Nduoko, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Good. How are you, City? And how are you, Jerry?
I'm good. Is it Friday? I thought it was Thursday. That's the best feeling ever.
To respond to your question, I am well, thank you.
I thought I would help Eric this morning.
You've done very well. Go on.
I asked, how are you doing? Everything okay since yesterday? The following takes place between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m. on Friday, the 4th of October. Here we are.
Yep. So, guys, you're good? No, right? A lot has happened, of course, between 10 a.m., 10 a.m. and 6 a.m. On this Friday. So let's take a look at what's been covered globally. I'm taking a look at the Standard this morning, and says, bank fights to get back 1 billion shillings from Ruto Hotel. So the court is enjoining KCB in ownership dispute with the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority over the land on which the Western Hotel sits. This is, of course, along Langata Road. And then, of course, the issue of Raila Mudavadi allies fighting over the handshake. We had that question yesterday when he had the Secretary General for ODM in the studio. We asked him, what was that Mudavadi was saying while he was in America? And he told us, well, he gave us the answer, and he went and repeated the same answer at a press conference. And then, of course, the Mudavadi allies, the ANC Secretary General, responded also in kind, saying, really, we shouldn't be dragging ourselves down this rabbit hole. This is just wrong premise.
Who began this so-called wrong premise?
It was Mudavadi stating.
Yes.
Stating
that he understood why the handshake took place. And the circumstances, he says, or it was reported, he said, were not flattering, were they? It painted a picture of someone whose head was in a vice.
It was held captive.
This one is not even captive. It was more or less like painful captivity, where one doesn't have much of a choice but to do what one is told. But the Secretary General very graphically gave his response to that particular statement. Yes. Not flattering, and you can understand why the ANC brigade would come out fighting. But the question is this what they're fighting about, or is it the sharing of the 6 billion that has been forked out to
ODM?
Yes, ODM clearly seem to have, from what we read in the papers, Kalonzo Musyoka and his people aren't getting any. Mudavadi isn't getting any.
Wetangula
is not getting, and any here I'm referring to the money.
You don't think they're getting some? No?
No, it's clear they're not getting some.
Definitely Friday. Right, so somebody's upset however you choose to slice it. Somebody is definitely upset.
Actually, now that you bring in that angle, just tell us more about it. The political parties fund.
Yes. Not political coalition funds.
The political parties fund.
Yes.
The Registrar of Political Parties says the coalition agreement that was lodged with her before the 2017 general election that formed NASA did not say how they were going to be dividing the money that comes to political parties or to the parties within the coalition. So she's falling onto the Political Parties Act, which says this is how you share out the money. So depending on the number of MPs that a party has, that's how the money goes. So ODM is getting 240 million shillings in this financial year. And there are arrears of 4.1 billion shillings over the last 5 years because of a court ruling. So it's getting all the cash, basically.
Good things for some, not so good for others. All right, it seems that a Swedish diver has offered to end the family's agony and national shame over missing a ferry tragedy bodies. And he has offered his services to, we're looking at now day 4 where these bodies have so far not been recovered. He's a scuba diver and whale shark expert, and he's volunteered to scale down the Likoni Channel waters to retrieve the bodies of 2 victims who drowned last Sunday after the vehicle plunged into the ocean from a ferry. His name is Volker Bassen, and he celebrated his 10th wedding anniversary to his wife Nima Njonjo. I don't know how that is important. However, he's the founder of the East African Whale Shark Trust, and he says that he can actually do the job. It's bringing national shame, and he says he can actually get in and help them recover the bodies in record time.
He wants to do it for free?
Well, he's offered his services. He didn't talk about any kind of remuneration.
He had said he'd do it for free. I've seen that news item elsewhere, and he said he'd do it for free.
So where doesn't he just do it?
You do need permission, even if you're volunteering your services. Yes. Remember, the ferry is government property. That particular channel, the water, government property. So if you want to venture in there,
you must get
to be part of something that is now a national matter, you must get permission.
Yeah, he says, I'm lending out a helping hand purely on humanitarian grounds and not asking for anything in return. He claims he's been involved in rescue missions in different countries, and his experience is in deep water diving. He was contacted previously in 2012 to recover the body of a Swiss national, and he says he would never attempt something foolish if it was not for his shark field device. And so he has his devices, he has the equipment, and he's ready to go in. However, I think it's important to note that there was a previous diver who was contracted by the family to actually go in and do this work, but then he was then stopped by the government now acquired rescue teams, because also I think they want there's a face that they want to save as government to be able to do this work on their own, regardless of the time the fact that time is passing.
That face vanished a long time ago.
It vanished, but
there's nothing to save.
I think they are.
Though the MP for Likoni seems to think so, because
he still seems to think there's something that she still thinks that there's something that can be done.
Well, she has really come out and spoken well about the Kenya Ferry Services. Well, I guess. I'm saying I guess because I can't think of something positive to say. So I will leave it at that.
But the bottom line is we still haven't recovered the bodies. There's a family there's a man who's sitting there thinking, my wife, my daughter.
There's assumption that when something sinks, you will actually find it where it supposedly went down. It doesn't quite work that way. Waters have what you call an undercurrent. There's a current you see on top. There's a point at which it ebbs. It sort of like hits a bank, and then it sort of like goes and moves. So that body and that vehicle could have actually moved.
Right. Plus, beneath the surface, we actually have the phenomenon of fast-moving waters. And when this is combined with rainfall, as what we saw, which was quite heavy in Mombasa yesterday, you can imagine that anything that was deep below has moved significantly.
It has moved. Yes.
And we've got relief for coast traders as SGR cargo directive is lifted. We discussed this earlier. I think it was last week or the week before. So basically, it's a big relief for thousands. Coast's dwindling economy is set to rebound after the government yesterday revoked the directive to haul cargo direct from Mombasa to Nairobi using the SGR. So basically, cargo was being forced onto the SGR directly. And this was, of course, crippling trade in Mombasa. And there was some backlash from the different sectors and industry, ranging from people who sell mandazis to the drivers, the lorry drivers, to people who, mechanics who service these drivers, right down to people who sell petrol to the drivers, and of course the drivers
service the trucks. The trucks.
The
Did I say
trucks.
they service the drivers?
Yes.
Where is my mind
No,
today?
no.
You took off from
it's-
cities,
It's an appropriate Freudian slip, but we do understand. There are those, but I believe what you meant was the trucks. Yeah.
No, but of course there was,
Yes.
the other two, the latter two, but or the former. But let's not go into that. I'm sure that industry suffered too. But what's important here is that there's been some relief. I was going to say for the drivers, but relief for the coast traders as SGR cargo directive is lifted.
This when the directive was issued, there was huge backlash, even from the coastal leaders. It was actually suspended almost immediately, and it was initially it had been issued by Kenya Railways and Kenya Ports. It was suspended by the minister, the CS, almost immediately. So it has actually not been in operation for
All
all
right,
those
so I'm
days.
reading out some old news. Huh?
No. There was a meeting yesterday, and the meeting yesterday was between the national government and the leaders from Mombasa, and they agreed, let's actually extend this. Let's continue with this as we seek ways of addressing the concerns that are being raised by the stakeholders down in Mombasa.
All right.
But must if you're hauling everything from, you still haul them on the road, right? If you're hauling them from the port onto the railway, why must we affect things?
What?
There's that directive went against what you'd consider and what you'd call laid down and understood logic of logistics, because what they then did when they did that, they introduced two factors that hadn't been there. It's called first and second mile additions to the whole process, and means additional cost to the whole process. Everything that was going to emanate from that directive was going to make everything that much more expensive. As simple as that. And if you understand the data that is available, you will know that even if all the containers that come into this country were taken through the SGR, it's the amount of money that you generate from that business would still not be able to sort out the matter of the debt, which is what we're trying to sort out.
Forget the debt. The cost of managing the SGR itself and keeping it running and maintaining it is 12 billion per year. So you can see why the government was keen on ensuring this directive is followed. They would have gotten their money from there. So no doubt they will find another way to pass on that cost to the consumer, i.e. us.
Ndu was talking about the need for people to be angry. There were angry demonstrations about this, and we now see results.
About the SGR,
Oh yes,
that directive.
there was, and it kept escalating.
It was
And
building
you see
up.
that
And
it
remember, we have
works.
a
It
It was
national
affecting
celebration.
businesses.
Yeah.
We have a national celebration coming up in Mombasa, and of course, you do not want to go into those national celebrations with this kind of murmurs on the ground. So this had to be dealt with, and I guess that's why we also see that this was being led by the Interior and Coordination Ministry.
But what led to even making that declaration
In the first place.
Desperation.
Business. Desperation.
No, the government has within its means the wherewithal to actually do other things other than something this draconian, knowing very well it's going to affect the lives and livelihoods of very many people in that particular part of the country.
I think so. When the directive was issued, did this actually happen for a little bit in terms of did the cargo actually have to go straight to Nairobi on SGR?
Yes.
So maybe they've collected the money they needed to.
Just that they-
I mean,
And they're done.
there's being facetious and there's being facetious. Come on. In a month.
Well, they made some money.
No, not really.
They would have, no doubt.
I think you need to understand the logistics involved in transporting cargo. It's not as simple as it sounds. No, it isn't.
Listen, for a month was all the cargo having to go through the SGR?
It had
and
to.
paying, yes. How much do you think the government would have made in that month?
I have absolutely no idea what they would have
It
made.
could be 12 billion,
No.
which is the 12 billion needed
Yes.
to pay the annual.
This
So they
order
done
was
it for
suspended.
Food for thought.
This order was suspended within a day.
I thought they did it for a month.
No, they didn't.
No.
It was just within a day.
Yeah.
It was actually issued, and then within a few hours, it had been reversed, but had been suspended. So it's Friday. It's how many days since Precious Talent tragedy?
We're on day 11.
11 days later. And we seem to be moving on from this. 8 children died, and I think we just have to keep reminding everybody that 8 children died. There are 8 families that are mourning. There are 8 kids whose potential and life was basically just snuffed out of us.
We have a mushrooming of other schools that have been closed, around the country. I think the latest we had a story of was coming out of Kisii, and this has come out from, now officials going through and making sure, or trying to make sure, that schools that are in existence are actually safe for children. If it has come as a result of what happened, yes, it's a good thing. However, I think we need a lot more than just shutting down schools and then hoping that they be rebuilt. There's a lot more that needs to be done. And again, this the outcry or the outrage has to be continuous.
Yeah, and I still insist that accountability, we must feel accountability. There must be somebody who basically is held accountable, not just the people who build the schools, but the people who are paid by taxpayers to ensure that the schools are safe.
Speaking of outrage and outcry, SportPesa fires Kenya staff, pushing job losses to 800 in a matter of days. An insider in the company said the company has given the workers notice depending on the contract and has promised to honor their contractual obligations in full. The new move comes days after announcing it would be quitting the country owing to hostile regulatory and taxation regimes. The betting firm on Wednesday told its 362 employees at its Kenyan unit that they would be laid off as it finalizes its exit from the country.
Riding straight on over that is the Treasury is working for creditors. 6 years expensive borrowing returns to haunt the government as coffers run dry and lenders tighten their purse. For every 100 bob that the government paid out from its revenue coffers to settle debt, 76 went to service commercial creditors. This compares to only 2 bob that it was spending to service commercial lenders 7 years ago, according to the annual public debt management report tabled in Parliament yesterday. You talked about this the other day, CT.
I did.
Rising public debt and managing this public debt, and so the impact of this is huge.
Now that you brought this up, actually, I shouldn't have just dismissed the question Jerry asked. You see, one of the reasons why the SGR saga will continue to be a little puzzling is because the railway hasn't actually, that whole operation hasn't actually been fully handed over to the Kenyan government as yet. Not really. So even when you're told facts and figures, one cannot be certain.
Isn't quite a lot of the revenue being paid to China directly?
I don't know whether it's being paid directly, but you see, if it's a debt that we owe for the financing, it's paid through the normal channels that the government uses to pay off such things. It isn't as though they collect money from the railway and then they put it in a bank and it goes to China. I don't think it works quite that way. What I do know for a fact is this is a private enterprise that is currently actually running the railway. They say it's ours, yes, because it's on our land, etc., etc.
But they've been contracted to actually manage it.
Yes, now
For 20 years, I think, or 25.
Bottom line, the facts and figures that you will be given will be facts and figures that they want to give you, not necessarily what it actually represents. Yes, what we know about is the debt. The debt we are clear about, but as to what they actually earn, tell me. Even when you've read the papers, what you hear of is what is owed and what can't be paid. Have you ever been told of how much they actually make? Seriously?
Yes, you are.
Seriously, how much they actually make?
As a profit? Well, they don't make any profits.
Again, I'm questioning that because any rail, especially this particular one, believe me, it isn't for lack of use. People use that railway. They really do.
It's costing 12 billion to manage and maintain
Again,
this annually.
You brought up the question that one should ask: why is it costing that much to maintain? That's a
because
great deal
that's
of
who
money.
we outsourced, although that's what the company is charging us, I guess.
Yes.
Now, inside the nation, finally something we should be speaking up about as Africans, inside big companies' dirty scheme of legal tax evasion. So talking about the illicit financial flows of multinationals within Africa. And we're losing 62 trillion. That's lost to tax revenue annually across the world, mainly to African countries. We're hemorrhaging billions and billions of dollars. I know we focus on domestic corruption, and there's been conversations about Transparency International and the likes actually making domestic corruption the dominant discourse, so we can overlook what multinationals are doing, because even if we curbed all domestic corruption, we still wouldn't have enough money to develop. But if we curbed these illicit financial flows from Africa or from Kenya, then yes, this is how we would develop. And this is about companies coming into Kenya and then registering themselves in tax havens, such as the Virgin Islands, doing business, and then, of course, avoiding, or I wouldn't say evading and avoiding are two different things, but avoiding corporate tax. So they're making use of our consumer power as Kenyans and I was going to say servicing us, but
Today.
and we're using their services, but they're not paying their taxes, and this is a legal loophole globally. So we're now finally talking about it. Maybe something we need to look at, and KRA is looking to tighten the reins, tighten the noose around these multinationals. Of course, we want to encourage them to come here. They create employment, but of course they have to pay their taxes.
Is that KRA's function, or is it the central bank?
It would be KRA collecting taxes.
No, ensuring that money isn't repatriated illegally.
It's not illegal. This is the thing. This is to do with tax, and what they've done is they've found a technical loophole which they capitalize on. And these illicit financial flows, they're not illegal, very unethical. They're not illegal, but it is KRA's mandate to collect taxes. It's not money being repatriated per se. It's mechanisms and technicalities that are being used to avoid tax. So it's the tax evasion, or in this case avoidance, because it's legal, that's being questioned here, which falls under the mandate of KRA.
And remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app on the Google App Store, Google Play Store, and Apple App Store. And with just one Standard fee, you get to access all of the Standard publications on the Standard e-paper app. Good morning. It's 21 minutes after 6 o'clock. This is the Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm Eric Latif. In the room we also have Ndu Oko and Jerry Thorne and C.T. Muga. Well, you know, we have heard issues of news outlets constantly being bashed lately. Now we've heard cases of newspapers being called gazeti ni ya kufunga nyama. We've heard even internationally, Donald Trump now calling it corrupt and fake media. We've heard cases in the locally where politicians are actually quoted or even mentioned in stories, and then they later come out to say, "Now, come on, that was it was wrong, it was rubbish." It was erroneous representation of that. And lately, we have seen an increase in that. We've even seen MPs take time to discuss the media and say we should even block the media from reporting what's being said in Parliament because they're misreporting what we are doing, or they're getting us wrong. And I'm wondering this morning, is the media really becoming the softest punching bag for every politician? Because politicians are known, and we've said this before, they say one thing today, they say another different thing tomorrow. And when you remind them that this is what they had said yesterday, they deny it. So why always me? That's a question I'm asking. I'll give you an example. So lately we've heard a story. There was a story yesterday on The Nation. And it was mentioning the Deputy President, William Ruto. And the Deputy President, of course, having seen the headline come out, he reacted immediately by posting on his social media handle that the now persistent, obviously sponsored fake news by hired bankrupt media that finds it difficult to make a sale without the name Ruto. Bure kabisa. Riswa. This was on the story on the Murumbi land ownership row. The headline was Murumbi land ownership row haunts Ruto. Before that, we also had another story that had been published on the Standard. Uhuru in new airport drama over Ruto ally. And of course, the Deputy President said Kenyans see through Standard Media's desperate gutter journalism, lies of drama. Jubilee is built on rock-solid philosophy and believes that no amount of scheming and propaganda can undermine. We have seen very many cases of this before.
I think the inverse of his statement is true in that there is no Ruto without the paper. It's not that there's no paper without Ruto. But having said that, the irony of the matter is he's then using the same papers and the same platforms to actually complain against them. So he clearly needs them. In terms of whether they're malleable or puppetable and buyable per se, yeah, absolutely true. You can buy headlines in this country, and I think he's been doing that quite clearly.
Have you?
Have I bought headlines?
Have you ever tried?
Why would I buy headlines? No, I have enough. I have enough of a platform here at Spice FM. I don't need to make any more noise than I do.
Do you know of anybody who has directly, like, you know, a particular good knowledge of somebody who has actually bought a headline?
Yeah.
Well, I think we also.
How much was it?
Eric, this is a media house. We are part of that media.
Yes.
Of course, Standard Group has never bought.
Do you really expect that even if one knew? This is one of those kissing and telling situations. Okay, so it more or less resides and is confined to the realm of
No. City,
allegations.
For as long as we continue, advancing this kind of half truths or zero truths, it shall be believed.
What's the zero truth in this case?
That headlines are bought.
Oh, well, I think there is
headlines are
there's due influence.
That somebody
when it
actually
comes
pays
to what
money to
story
somebody and it goes into the front page of a national newspaper. Do you know what goes through before a headline is actually decided on?
Yes, it goes through very many levels.
And all those
then
levels
of
are bought.
approvals. Well, no, but at the end of the day...
If you buy the top, I mean,
buy
come
the
on.
top, what are you doing?
When you see 3 headlines in the 3 dailies that we see, or the 3 national papers that we have, so you see the Daily Nation, the Standard, and the Star running exactly the same headlines. You want to tell me the editors were collaborating? No.
It just means that there was one story.
And all this is done globally, by the way. So you'll find...
It just means that there was one major story.
Who decides what the major story was? And usually you'll find it's a political story, of which there's been more important stories covering issues and human life stories or social stories that actually would inform the public better in terms of their decision making generally on matters governance. Yet what you'll have is some political rhetoric running the headlines every day. And when you see them sort of collaborate or look like they've collaborated, they haven't. It's just that somebody has bought all 3 headlines. And it's like this globally, news agendas being set by those that either run the media or those that are politically inclined and have influence in the media. In the UK or in the West, it's Rupert Murdoch, and he's got a lot of power. It influences everybody's thinking, people's opinions and values and cognitions. Here, you'll find politicians can actually penetrate the different papers quite easily. So, yes, the headlines are bought, agendas are set, and it's not actually as complex or as intricate as you think. So when you then come back to these very headlines that you've used previously and bash these newspapers, it's kind of pot calling the kettle black, really, or it's, yeah.
So here's the thing, and that's what I'm raising. I know how news gets to the media houses, all right? So there are people who are the newsmakers, and they have contacts within the media houses, and that's how they reach out to them. That's how they reach out to us and say, oh, you guys, we're having this event, or we have this kind of agenda that we are driving, or this is what we are doing. And do you find it of interest for you to place it in the media house? And that's how it starts. So of course there'll come a place where you've got a very well-oiled communication machine that actually is able to constantly have interesting stories coming out to the media. And eventually, over time, they'll be able to influence. And that's direct influencing. And the influence here is because I'm giving you what you need. What I need as a journalist is a good story. And if I get a good story all the time from Jerry, then Jerry becomes a very close ally of mine, because I know I can trust her.
Either
because I can trust her. Not necessarily the brown envelope. It's just looking at it from professional side of you. I mean, I get to know you. You're a trusted source. So whenever Jerry calls me and I've developed this relationship with her, I'm going to run the story. But then, if Jerry is actually doing this politically and she's manipulating, because we've seen that happen also a lot of the times, that the same politicians will try and manipulate by giving you false information, giving you fake news, and then it gets published. And then tomorrow, when we publish something that has been said against you, you go ahead and insult us just because we didn't get it from you.
Sometimes the news that the politicians or whoever it is that's trying to control the media or paying to set the agenda, sometimes the news isn't fake. It's somewhat true, but it's actually of no consequence to the reader, and we don't need to splash it all over the headlines. But they pay to have this done either for attention, name recognition, agenda setting narratives. But yeah, it happens.
But why we've always been bashed?
Because of these things. Because you're not being honest to the reader.
Recently, we had a situation where a certain relationship tussle remained in our headlines for close to a week. In national newspapers, a relationship tussle between a politician and his wife.
It's still there.
How on earth can that constitute national news? How?
Headlines
news.
How?
Headlines.
How? Even national news. A snippet in one of the yellow, in a page in the yellow press, understandable. National news. How? Of what interest was that story to? We have newspaper. We have publications that deal
So
with
what's your
such things.
conspiracy theory here?
It's not a conspiracy theory. I'm just looking at the facts and I'm asking the question that if you look at that particular, look at the Star's headlines today. KRA freezes accounts of 11 universities. That would be of interest because the people go to universities, they're students in universities, they have parents. It's of interest. It's national interest. If you look at the nation, how companies hide in havens to avoid tax, it's news. If you look at the Nairobian, two cop married to two officers, or rather top cop married to two officers. Now, if you buy this paper, that's the sort of news you want to get. So it is interesting. Let's find out. If this was the headline in one of the major newspapers, you'd wonder, what on earth is this information doing as a headline? So, the question that is being raised, the bashing as you refer it to, is when people question this and says, how did this get here? Maybe someone made a mistake on day one, but for almost an entire week, no. It cannot be a mistake. It's deliberate. Someone somewhere ensured that particular news item remained there.
And
You
because you
also
don't find it
find-
relevant, you think it's not relevant?
Well, you also find that
It's
the
not
news,
me who thinks it's
necessarily,
relevant.
but you also find that you even
Since
when
when? No. And one, Eric. Since when do personal relationship issues become national news? And why should they be the
This
headline
is
of
not
papers?
new. This is not just in Kenya. This happens globally, like Njeri has said.
Like where?
about
Give
other
me an
headlines.
example. Like
This
where?
happens globally. We
Like-
have issues of a prime minister who has had an affair with somebody, and it goes global. We have
That's
had issues
the
of
prime minister,
separation.
and it's a one-off story.
We've,
and they don't follow
had
it
issues
through.
of an MP in Parliament who's had a scandal, or like sex scandals. It hits the global headlines, not just
Wait.
local headlines.
Sex scandal in this country.
No, globally.
But a sex scandal is
In
very
the UK.
different from a divorce or a sort of misunderstanding in a marriage. We don't have to be fed daily. I mean, it's still going on. There was clearly an agenda there where every day, it wasn't even interesting. It wasn't even scandalous or sensationalist. It was getting boring. They were reporting that I didn't, he bought the car, I didn't buy the car. So what? What consequence is that to Kenyans? Of what consequence is that to Kenyans?
Okay.
Let's go into the traffic break. It's 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Spice FM, the Situation Room. I'd like you to contribute on this conversation, 0719 012 600. The media is getting bashed left, right and center, especially by politicians. Is this fair? Is this a fair accusation of calling the media fake news media?
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelogue, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to
Today,
Spice
Ngong Road promises to be a beehive of traffic. Being Friday, most schools are heading to the showground. Right now, it's moving, but things will change very shortly. Mombasa Road, always telltale signs of drama coming roundabout on Friday morning. Heading downtown towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout will give us some drama. Absolutely. It's flowing well right now, however, and it's not so bad. However, we will see bumper to bumper traffic on that road. All right, Wayaki Way leading towards the 87 underpass and heading towards what was the Westlands roundabout, and then heading down towards Chiroma is not so bad this morning, but it's gonna clog up as we move along. All right, everything else seems to be in order from Langata Road to the Thika Superhighway at this moment. Let's tell you more when things change around about 30 minutes. If you see anything right now that we should share information about, don't hesitate to give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
24 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. I'm Eric Latif. Jerry Thorne is in the room. CT Muga and Ndu Oko.
Hata waandishi wa habari wawachane na hadithi gushi na wachane na fake news. Si namna hiyo? Waandike mambo ya ukweli. Waandike ukweli. Wawache hii porojo kidogo kidogo hii. Lakini nimeambiwa na hawa watu wa magazeti ati sio makosa yao. Ati ili gazeti iuze lazima uweke jina ya Ruto hapo headline ndio gazeti iuze. Sasa mimi nauliza nyinyi my friends, kama hiyo ndio maneno kwamba ati ili gazeti iuze lazima muweke headline jina ya Ruto, hiyo ni sawa, basi tukubaliane. Lakini pia niwaulize, kama hiyo ndio story, sasa inaonekana mimi na nyinyi tunasaidiana kuuza gazeti. Lakini sasa siku ile dividends ikifika, tafadhali msinisahau. Tugawane kwa sababu sasa inaonekana hii gazeti lazima tuuze pamoja.
He's a great orator, very engaging and captivating in terms of his rhetoric and capturing people's hearts and minds with some humor there. But he has to be careful not to completely discredit these media houses and the papers, because he's going to need them, and he does need them. So there's some irony in that he also needs for them not to be reporting positively about him, but to help report his campaigns. He's going to need them. So if he totally bashes them, it's not that they won't work with him again, but if the public then has no trust and confidence in these papers, then it will counter any media work that he does during any of his campaigns. So he has to be careful not to completely ridicule them.
I dare say that a lot of the hue and cry comes from the fact that it is what was said. It was said, not necessarily what was said. In the sense that, there was information that was spread and people now know. Not that they were quite upset that the information got out there, but the manner in which it came out. And there have been many stories that have been shared. We've seen it over and over again. Exactly when people in prominent positions have said, "I didn't say that," and then we had, "I didn't. This is not what I meant. I was misquoted." And then we've had playbacks on several occasions. Then when it's played back and actually mirror to mirror having yourself actually having said this. So I don't think it's not that it's what was said, but it was that it was said and that it now came out and it showed you in a different light. And then that's why we have all of the fake news phenomenon, rearing its head over and over and over again. But then also we must be very careful whether we're individuals in layman's position, one-to-one citizenry, or even people in prominent positions. You open your mouth and say something is bound to get out there, especially when it has anything to do or touches on, matters of public interest or matters of governance and leadership. It will come out and people will have their opinions. And we also know that opinions and views are shaped by what people read or see constantly in the media. And I think that's one thing that's feared, that, you as an individual, when you think that when somebody hears something about you, they will form an opinion, they have the same fears too. The people who are calling it fake news have the same fears, and that can be founded in the fact that you are an individual. So they think, okay, well, this information,
can be misconstrued.
Yes, this information has gotten out there. I do not know what people are thinking. How is it going to affect my future? How is it going to affect the work that I am not doing at the moment? So it's not that the information it's not what information was shared. It is that the information was shared.
In some cases also, CT, there's an issue of I've been misquoted or I've been quoted out of context.
If politicians and people who are quoted didn't say it so often, it might actually be believable. But every time something seems to work against someone or they're called out on something they said, their immediate retort is that they were misquoted. It's always not them. It's always the media, someone in the media, someone else. It's never, ever, ever them.
And it has to come in through the angle of, there's an underhand deal, there's a hidden agenda here somebody has been paid, money has been poured.
We've seen
to
this,
finish me.
Even when you watch the news, you've had situations where, and it's something that you find politicians practicing more than anybody else. They say one thing and then they say they were misquoted.
Right.
And the media houses have gone to show that this is not true. You say I was misquoted, then they play that segment where you said this. And then you say that they show the segment where you actually said this. There are certain things that don't require interpretation. You said it.
You said it. Here we are. And if you said that you did not mean what it is that you said, then why?
What were you saying?
What were you saying?
What exactly
if you opened your mouth to express a certain sentiment or express a certain opinion over something, that is what you said. Those are the words that essentially tumbled out of your mouth. So what did you expect us to then, see that to be?
And usually it's something that they say where there's an audience.
Yes,
so
there are
it
people
means
there.
that you purpose whatever you're saying to have a certain effect. So you do know what you're saying.
You've shaped it for that particular audience.
Precisely. So how can you possibly be misunderstood?
And if we look at the other side of it, there's always the complaints from people on the other side of the divide, people who are consuming this information, that we really don't hear anything else apart from the utterances of politicians or people in positions of leadership. And in this way, we actually do see some things being taken out of context. The individual could have said it. They could have meant it to be what they said. However, they would have been in a different forum where they were talking about something totally different. And that they were talking about is actually hardly ever covered. They could have been talking about development agenda for the country. They could have been talking about the projects that they're implementing. And that piece of what they were doing is not covered. But a question would have been asked, or opinion would have been derived from something they said in relation to something else. And that is then what makes headlines. And I think perhaps that should often be taken into consideration, whereby they're talking about other things that are happening in this country. There are so many things that can be reported on. There's so much information that can be shared, and unfortunately we've shied away from that because the information being given out there or being given prominence is what a politician or a leader has said that could have been taken completely out of context. But again, it's hot, it's interesting, and that is what captures the minds and eyes of those who are reading it. It makes the headlines, it's sensational, and that is what is going to carry the day. So if we ask, we have a lot of the times when these announced or these splashes are being made, they're within the context or within the forum of something totally different that has happened. And that's the truth. That's the
I think
truth.
the question we need to be asking is, what is the role of the media in the first instance? Does it owe a duty to its citizenry, or rather to the populace or its audience? Does it owe a duty to inform and update, or is it there to sell papers, make money, and so anything goes? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. And that moral duty, do they carry it out? Because the media does have a role to play in a democracy in ensuring that the electorate is well informed as to issues so that they make the right decisions when it comes to choosing their leadership. But of course, this is a moral obligation which isn't legislated for. There are some standards that the media is asked to adhere to if they've been licensed. But other than that, do they have a moral duty to their readers to ensure that their readers are well informed and fully informed? And I think in Kenya the case is no. They don't.
Why do you say
they
so?
don't. Because of the headlines we see, very rarely do you see a story
You're talking
being
about the
carried out.
front page headline.
I'm not. When I say headlines, I'm talking about the prominence given to certain stories. So I use headlines colloquially. But if you look at the stories that we're given, very rarely do we delve into issues that actually affect individuals. Very rarely do you see the logical conclusion of a story. Very rarely do you see the media actually do any civic education. I'm not saying it is their legal duty, but I'm talking about morally. Do they have this duty? I think so in a democracy. But of course, they're profit-making entities, and the bottom line is what matters.
I think it is practice, Jerry. So, you could say very rarely, depending on what you consider rare in your frequency. But then it does happen. We've had stories where we're talking about the one the other day. In fact, we even discussed it here, the Child Welfare Society. We've had stories about pollution. We've seen the stories about.
See how we're counting them on one hand?
And
This
they
should
be the
stand
norm.
out like a sore thumb, and they really should
be
There
the
are
norm.
many. The
It
issue
should be
we've been discussing here about Mombasa and the SGR has been in the headlines throughout the week. Every day that they're complaining. It's actually not even
We've
page
talked about
10.
two things. I'll tell you how the media shapes our cognitions and the agenda and the value system, and also the discourse we have, what you're thinking about and your thought process. We've had two conversations this week, I think, that highlight that. We talked about the value of human life and what sets that. And the media has a great role to play in this, in that if they were to report this, and so that when there's, let's say, an accident, it's not given, 3 inches at the bottom left-hand corner of the third page, 50 people die. It actually communicates and starts to create the impression to the reader that this is not important, because we place value on the headlines and we place value on how many column inches are given to a story. So that's one example of where the media actually comes in and affects society negatively in terms of or as an example, I think they've set the value of human life in Kenya. Or
Low.
They've contributed to it. The other story slips my mind because I was looking at what CT is reading in the paper, so I'll come back to that in a sec. But there was another story I was going to come back to in terms of how the media has negatively affected our thought process. So it's not just the opinions that it shapes; it's also our thought process, our cognition that the media shapes. So they've got to be very careful, very delicate. And also, the quality of journalism that we have is to be questioned, to be honest. You have journalists, but you don't have people in specialist field with esoteric knowledge actually writing about these subjects. So sometimes you get a very wishy-washy story, very little information, of which I think we, the readers, are entitled to a bit more.
I think we cannot divorce media from being the fourth estate. That is what media is. And when we look at it coming from, being in a position of information, giving information of what is happening. A lot of times you say, well, I didn't know that was happening. It is the responsibility of media to share that information. Fourth estate was basically being called the fourth arm of government. And so now informing of all that is going on from the legislative to the executive, to the judiciary, and now being the arm of information, of sending that information out there. I think to an extent sometimes it is forgotten, and the commercialization of media has taken over the information arm of media, sharing what really should be going on.
Globally, if you look at stories how stories are given prominence, the stories that are given prominence are about leadership and leaders. I mean, that's what happens. You see, if you watch CNN today, what story is going to lead Trump? Or Boris? All right, watch any of them. It's so when you see, like national headlines like this one, this is because it takes prominence. When you talk about Raila and Mudavadi allies fighting over handshake, these are national leaders, and what they say, how they conduct themselves in the public space also has some relevance to what the to the public
it
and the country.
shouldn't, unless it's of consequence to us, the people of Kenya. What's happening between Raila and Mudavadi is of no consequence to
It's
us at
not
the moment.
between
We
them.
don't.
Basically,
No.
it's-
For
it's-
instance,
it's-
I've seen that at the Standard.
Yes,
it's
but
of no consequence to us whatsoever. We don't need to know their internal wranglings. Of course, they want us to because this is part of their political agenda, and they're politicking and they're involving us, the
The
citizenry.
handshake is not an internal thing. The handshake is a national
But
thing.
Mudavadi's take
Na-
on it and Raila's
Yes,
subsequent
and-
reaction to Mudavadi's take is none of our business.
It is
really.
our business.
I
These are
don't think
national
so, no.
leaders. They have people who subscribe to their
It's
parties.
national discourse.
Yes.
Now, if they were discussing issues, how does this affect people, whether Mudavadi and Raila are getting on, other than party affiliation, of which is not ideologically based, as we know in Kenya, or it's not issue based, other than the fact that you belong to a party, which doesn't even matter to Kenyans until it comes to
No,
elections.
it's-
How is it relevant that Raila and Mudavadi are in a fix?
It's about the handshake.
How is it relevant?
It actually even
Whether
goes,
the handshake
it
is relevant.
goes
And then the
beyond
history of the
handshake
handshake.
even. It goes even beyond
And the workings
handshake.
behind this is what national coalition.
Not only that, Kenyans are very serious political animals.
Because of
they-
the newspapers, we're highly
Not
politically charged.
No,
Absolutely.
not necessarily.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
We should
The
still be focusing on stories
the
like.
papers take advantage of what exists. There's an appetite that Kenyans have for political issues or issues political.
Where does that
So-
appetite come from? What informs that appetite? This is what I'm saying. The
But
media
our
sets
pol-
the
it's our-
agenda.
no, not our
How did
politics.
how did they get to form this opinion or attitude that this is what we wanted to
right.
gobble it up?
All right.
If it is not something that
How
was
did
presented
the
to
western
them.
part of the country get to be known as an opposition zone? Jerry will tell us it is because of the media. It is not so. The events from 1968 and 69 that led to the parting of ways between the then Vice President, the President, and the subsequent forming of the Kenya People's Union, those are events that actually took place. The ruling party had people move away from it. It was a national issue. And then other things followed thereafter over the years. Now, it has to be of importance to the people what happened to the political scene, because a lot of our development for a long time was attached to our politics. The former president of this country put it well, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. And that has been the case. And if you think that is a tall order, recently, after the handshake, we had the refurbishing of the Kisumu port. That port didn't come into existence because of the handshake. So why does KPA suddenly take interest in something that has been in existence for as long as time? All I'm saying is that our politics is fundamental. It's like air in this country. It has nothing to do with the media
Politics is
exacerbating.
fundamental everywhere.
In this
actually,
country,
because
You begin to allude to an old age debate that's had within the media circles or within media discourse, whether the media reflects society or shapes society. Is the
It's
media
both.
is the media
It's
reflecting
both.
the sentiments of society or shaping society?
It's both.
And there should be a balance to a certain extent. But what tends to happen in Kenya, it's shaping society so much that when it starts to reflect society, it's already an unduly influenced society by the media. I don't know if you follow my train of thought there. But people are highly charged, politically
I am
charged.
known to be slow in understanding things. But this
On this one?
this particular statement you make doesn't require too much intelligence. I do understand what you're saying. Yes.
when stories are
sarcasm
when
this
stories are
morning.
put out there, that about corruption, like this particular one in the headline of the Standard today is about corruption. It's about unprocedural acquisition of a piece of land, where now from then on some development has happened on the land, and then we have a bank that says, wait, we actually had lent this business some money to develop on this piece of land that's now being claimed by the public agency. This is a national headline, because this is a national story, because it actually talks about high-level corruption.
Now, what is
And
the
others
issue
that
at
talk
hand
about-
there? That's we then need to dissect that. Forget personalizing it. Go into it. Do we have a problem in the lands ministry?
Yes, we
Dig
do.
deeper. Go into the actual issues. They don't do that, and we won't see the end of this
What
in
has-
terms
what-
of
what
we won't
hasn't
get to
been
the
done?
logical conclusion of this story.
This
Tomorrow
story-
it will no
this-
longer be there.
this
There'll be a new
story-
headline.
The story of this particular hotel on Langata Road has actually been in the headlines for very, very many days. It
Not
keeps coming up.
days.
Every time there's something new that happens, the media does not fail to actually publish it. And
Which
this
is why I go back to, it's not that it was. I mean, now if we have the declaration of fake news jumping out at us every now and then, it's not what was said, it is that it was said. And so then now, because if we come back to what you were talking about and saying that is media a punching bag, has media become a punching bag, and saying that, you know, the information that's put out there is just being used to target certain individuals. And this is because now everybody knows about a particular scandal that you are involved in, or something that's going to come up, and that will then take the attention of the nation. And so if you're saying that journalists or media is not covering the stories as it should, then what do you want them to cover? These are the words that come out of your mouth. These are the things that you do say. These are operations that you are involved in. Okay, like what we see on the front page today. If the deputy president is involved in this issue, but the thing is that the attention is given to the deputy president as opposed to the issue that lies behind it.
Also,
Who
Then
is
we
giving-
should be asking
but who's
questions
giving the
moving
attention?
forward.
It's not to say that those headlines aren't true, of course. And with the genesis, or with the emergence of fake news and the idea and the concept of fake news, it can also be used as a rebuttal just automatically, or that's fake news. People no longer have to go into the intricacies or of the truth
The
and
detail of
defend
it.
themselves. Yeah, so veracity is very easily disproved in terms of they just say it's fake news, and we then buy that it's fake news, but that defense of fake news is actually fake. So people don't know who's lying and who's not, and we're very easily misled, to be honest. And for some people, forget the national papers. For some people, some of these vernacular stations, for instance, word is gospel. Whatever is said, I know, for example, I always use my show as the example of a citizen. Whatever is said on radio is gospel truth. Now, maybe we need to teach the audience that they need to question things
There are
occasionally.
people who, for so long as it is written and it's in the papers, it is
It's
true.
It's true.
That's why there's certain there's some printed matter that gains so much traction because they deal in nothing but just, it's not even just scandal. It's, let me say, even before fake news became fake news,
It's been there.
they had their corner.
It's been manufactured.
Yeah.
In this particular case, now, for example, we are seeing the deputy president actually has complained.
He actually wasn't complaining.
In the last 2 months alone, he has hit back. You know, more than twice actually.
No, he wasn't complaining.
Is he being targeted then?
He wasn't complaining.
What was he doing?
He wasn't complaining.
What is he doing?
He's also managed to divert our attention from the fact that he's being accused of corruption. He's now, fighting the papers. So he's framing the discussion very differently, and the paper has agreed to do that. So, and you'll see tomorrow the paper will fight him back. Instead of the discussion now being about whether there was corruption under his docket, under him, whether personal or in a government level, instead of us having that discussion, we are now discussing whether the papers attack him or not. So we've also got to be very careful in terms of framing and the discourse that we then have.
Discussing the matter of his discussion within the media, what you are doing is you are discussing him. So if he brings up an issue of complaint, it isn't a complaint.
He enjoys the attention.
It is a publicity stunt.
And there's nothing like bad publicity. There's
Publicity is
always
publicity.
Yes.
it's publicity. You're having people in. You've put yourself back in their minds. You've put your name back in their mouths, and they're talking about you all the time.
He understands
And so
this.
he understands this very, very well. And
Remember,
most
it's not
individuals
just him.
do.
Remember the
Most
form of-
individuals do understand that what can actually be done when everybody in the country is thinking about you, speaking about you, and discussing about what is the latest thing that involves
Just
you.
listen to that statement. Listen to that statement. I'm a shareholder. Every time
Now that we are selling the paper together.
now that every time you mention my name, okay, it's more papers are sold. Where has it been said except now that he has said it? It is him who has said it, isn't it? But now it's going to be national discourse.
Right.
And the national discourse will revolve around him, the individual.
And it's not just him. Remember, even the former Prime Minister also the other day had issued a statement reacting to a story that had been published as well on a Sunday paper. And it was talking about him. And, his communication team issued a full-page statement rebutting that story and saying this is wrong. This is targeting the former Prime Minister. Why does this go this way? So there's a constant trend.
It's become a sort of battlefield for the politicians, and that's where the media fails us as the audience, in that they give them this field or
they're
this
willing
platform.
participants.
Absolutely.
Rather, sorry, we are willing participants.
I don't think so. I think we accept what we're fed. We don't have too many options.
And
There's two or three
how do you
daily
define
papers.
willingness?
If you don't have choices, if you don't have too many choices, then
You'll take what you get,
it's not
basically.
a willingness per se. It's due to maybe lack of options, and it's not like we can decide not to buy the paper. We want to see what's going on.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Let me end the hour with this one. I'm not going to play it. I'll actually start the hour with this one of President Donald Trump in the States. He's actually the one who's really championed the whole idea of fake media. Now he's actually even calling it. It's no longer fake media; it's corrupt media. And maybe he's basically borrowing what Jerry is saying, that media is corrupt. It's easily corrupted.
It's manipulable.
It's
manipulable.
It's being manipulated by certain quarters, and then you are unable to manipulate it, so you complain. And when a headline actually suits you, you don't complain at all. You don't make any noise at all. We don't hear you complaining. What do you think about this? 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Our hashtag is Situation Room, and our Twitter handle is SpiceFMKE. Please follow us. Also, we are live streaming on Facebook, SpiceFMKE, and on YouTube, SpiceFMKE. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Good things are happening on Waiakwe in terms of the fact that traffic is moving. We don't have much traffic right now. And remember, it is Friday and there's still the dregs of payment in people's pockets right now. So many cars are still on the road. Gong Road is the normal construction issue. But remember, a lot of people are heading out to the showground today to experience the agricultural show. So there will be traffic, especially later on in the afternoon. And that we can predict. Call me the traffic predictor, as it were. Langata Road, not looking so bad today as you try to head into the city centre, and coming out of Mombasa Road onto Uhuru Highway is not so bad either. So good tidings as well as forecasts of doom. It's a whole mix and match for traffic this morning. 0719-012-600 is our number. Call us if you see something that we should know about or you want us to share in terms of what may be clogged or an alternate route that you have found.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start.
It's 2 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.6 in Malindi. We are live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. We also live stream every morning on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Please like our page and also follow our conversation. We also live stream on Twitter, and that is Spice FM KE on Twitter, and our hashtag is Situation Room. Well, We've had conversations all this morning. We've talked about, we've looked at the paper, we've looked at the headlines, we've looked at reactions to the headlines, and now we need to look at other things. Remember, you can always contribute to our conversations at 0719-012-600, 0719-012-600. Now let's take a look at what Njeri has been talking about. Voting.
I'm always talking about voting and elections and democracy and so on. Today I want us to look at a certain demographic rather within society that we tend to avoid yet protect or sort of disregard in terms of their opinions. And these are children. I want us to look at whether children should be allowed to vote. In terms of universal suffrage, barriers based on wealth, gender, color, etc. They've been torn down, yet with children we haven't brought them into the fold when it comes to voting. Is this because we feel that children don't understand and won't have the knowledge to vote? We could easily argue that a lot of voters don't understand some of these issues and don't have enough information to vote. So why is it we don't let children vote? And if we should, at what age should we let them vote? That's what I want us to look at today, and the importance of bringing them into the fold. So for instance, because their issues will be education based, you'll find education will be improved in terms of policy if the politician knows that the children are going to be voting as well and they count as numbers. Also, of course, this is the demographic that is most going to be affected by the policies that are coming up, not just because they need the services in terms of education and so on, but because they have to live longest through them. We saw this with Brexit, for example, where you had a 96-year-old voting, and the Brexit, of course, he's not going to live long enough to feel the effects or the impact of Brexit, whereas a 16-year-old could not vote, and yet they have to live through it the longest. It has the most impact on them. So should we allow children to vote, and if so, at what age? That's what I want us to look at. CT, what's your take?
What age?
Well,
No. Forget age. Let's talk about whether we should allow them first. So anybody under 18.
I'm not quiet because I lack something to say. I'm actually formulating.
You gave me a
what I want
look.
to say.
That's why I came to you.
Yes, I gave you a look because you actually sit next to me. And when my eye turns, the person whom it's most likely to turn to is actually you.
All right.
The idea itself is not as preposterous as it sounds. Not really.
Of course not.
If we can...
Go on. I agree with you.
I'm actually going to change my mind.
I agree with you.
If this is how you're going,
if this is how you're going about it, I'm going to change my mind.
We must be at loggerheads.
And I'm going to take back my view. If you consider what 15-year-olds go through or 16-year-olds are allowed to do, just look at the way modern parents allow their children to drive cars, allow them to go out until some crazy hour. These are freedoms that many modern parents allow their children. And in a time gone by, this was something that was, well, you had to sneak out of the house. If the house had a good enough window and you weren't living on the second story or something, the window was the good passage through which you went out. Now, if you believe that somebody who, not even teenage, by the time a child is 10, they actually have a clear, not even 10. I'm talking about 10 because at that time the ideas are formulated somewhat, but they do have an opinion.
Absolutely, and voting is an expression.
I am taking back that position. I am definitely taking back that position.
I'm concurring today, am I?
No, you're not concurring.
I'm behaving
today.
myself.
No, you're not. You're doing exactly what you do every day.
You want me to misbehave?
It is your topic, but you do have a point. And the point that you have is, apart from just voting, what else should we allow young people? What else should we legally allow young people to do? Legally.
It's an interesting one because we had the debate over the HPV vaccination.
Yes.
Should we allow them to make a choice there?
Yes.
It's their lives that are going to be affected. Why should parents have to give consent over things like that? And I think it boils down to the understanding of the child, whether the child understands the consequences of their choices. But how do we then determine that?
Children will understand consequences if it's explained to them. Yes.
At what age?
Understanding? A 5-year-old understands voting as a 5-year-old would, but they do understand it.
but in their contexts.
It's
It
always
and also-
may
in
not
there.
necessarily be in the global context.
No. Now, that's the point. So what do you want them to do? To have a global understanding of things before you can give them certain permissions? Is
To
that-
vote?
is
Well,
that-
most voters don't have a global understanding
When
of
they get
things,
to a
yet
certain
they're allowed
level.
to vote.
No, at least they have a global understanding of consequence.
Who?
Most
No, no,
voters.
no,
No,
You
they
do.
don't.
You
No,
do.
Eric-
Not any more than a 17.
No.
I do, yes.
Eric has a point. When you get to be an adult, you have not just the opportunity and the capacity of mind, but everything around you enables you to understand things that a 5-year-old cannot understand just by virtue
So
of
what
the
is the
fact they're
difference
being looked
between a
at.
17-year-old and an 18-year-old?
There's hardly any difference.
So why isn't the 17-year-old allowed to vote?
There's hardly any difference. The real difference is in the cognitive development of their minds. It was assumed.
But you're going to find some 16-year-olds are far more advanced in terms
No,
of cognitive
they're not-
capacity
they-
than an 18-year-old.
Please don't misunderstand maturity and intelligence. Somebody can be 13 years of age and they are super intelligent and they understand things quickly. It doesn't mean they're mature.
No,
And
it
vice
doesn't mean
versa.
they're mature. They
And-
don't
and
have
vice
they don't have
versa.
a social sum of
A
experience
child's
enough to be able to
genius.
apply it in a cognitive process like this.
Yes.
No, and
They
vice
don't have a
versa.
sum total of experience to be able to,
To
do
enable
that.
them
No,
to
no,
do
no,
that.
no,
enable
no,
them
no,
to
no.
do
If it's
that.
experience, and vice versa, you can have an 18-year-old and a 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old has been through so much more and understands things, and you call it the sum total of social experiences, a lot more than the 18-year-old, because the
yes. We're
18-year-old
not-
may be
we're-
spoon-fed.
no, no,
So
no.
it happens.
No. You see, you want to give an example, and you want to give an example using an exception. Okay? The way we use examples is when you're talking about something that's in
No, we
plenty.
use
general,
examples
you
as
know.
we
Yes.
would like. Thank you very much.
No, but
I
that's
also
what
want to point out
I
that-
am happy that you have described what you're doing. Please continue.
I also
Yes.
want to point out that constitutionally it could be argued that it's actually against the Constitution not to let the children vote, because the Constitution of Kenya discriminates, or rather prohibits discrimination either directly or indirectly against any person on the basis of race, sex, pregnancy, marital status, health status, ethnic or social origin, color, age, disability, religion, conscious belief, culture, dress, language, or birth. So we've got age in there. Are we discriminating?
Read together with the part that describes what.
I haven't got that in front of me. Are we discriminating against
No,
children?
I'm
You
using that.
are
In,
gi- no, she
I'm
is
using that
giving-
in,
no,
in
no,
the
no.
legal terms. You know, lawyers will always tell you
not
if you
only
read
that,
this
Jerry
and read
is using
together with.
discriminative information. she has chosen the bit that would justify what she wants to
Isn't
say.
that what we do generally?
No, we are not all
Choose
lawyers,
something.
Jerry. We are not all
We're not
lawyers.
No,
all
I'm
lawyers.
saying it's possible to argue that there's an element of discrimination when it comes to voting by us not allowing children to vote, and it's against the Constitution.
think of a different
You should not be
argument.
discriminated against for anything, including your age. So why are we stopping children from voting?
If you take that into consideration, they should look after themselves.
The conversation this morning, and Jerry is raising it, is should we allow children to vote? Don't even discuss the age yet. It's just the concept of allow children to vote. What do you think? 0719 012 600 at 0719 012 600. You can also comment on our Facebook page where we are live streaming Spice FM KE. We'd love to know what you think. Good morning. 8:11
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Intelligent humor and nostalgic music.
12 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. In the room, we have CT
94.4
Muga,
Spice
Ndu
FM,
Oko,
Nairobi.
and Jerry Thorne, who's asking, should we allow children to vote?
Yeah, it's such an absurd idea to claim that a 6-year-old should be allowed to vote. What reasons do we have to justify her exclusion? If we can allow, for instance, Argentina, Brazil, Scotland, and so on, they've lowered the voting age to 16. Now, that seems reasonable. When you say 16, you think, yes, somebody would be able to know the actions or the consequences of their choices. But why stop there? Why should it... stop there? Why should we exclude children when they are actually part and parcel of the country? Why should we limit their political rights? We've come up with a lot of arguments. One is that children don't understand what they're doing, but neither do a lot of voters when they're making choices. Children are citizens, and they shouldn't have to qualify. There shouldn't be any prerequisites, just as with anybody else. And as I've stated, the Constitution is very, it expressly states not to discriminate on the basis of age.
The children and the parents should be the same.
In terms of rights, they should have absolutely the same rights. This is a right; it's not a role or a duty. This is a right to be involved in political life. Why should we take that away? Why should children have less rights? So it's not a role or a duty; it's a right. And I've emphasized, I think, one of the advantages.
Within what context? Because if you want to take this argument to its logical conclusion, we will contextualize it. Why is a child a child? Why is an adolescent an adolescent?
And it's because of the stages. There are different stages. At what you're able to acquire at the childhood stage, at adolescent stage, you even look at preteens and things like this, and then you look into young adulthood and upper adulthood. But if you look at the arguments against why children should not be allowed to vote, well, number one, you look at the lack of capacity in terms of what they are able to see as making decisions to what is best for them.
But you'll find that in a lot of adults.
A lot of decisions that are made for children, a lot of or things that they enter into are made on their behalf. What school they will go to, what meals they will eat, what outings they will attend, who their friends will be. Those decisions are made for them at that age.
Absolutely.
So it's
by a parent.
It could be argued that
because they don't understand the consequences of actions that they would take on their
but
own.
neither do a lot of
And
voters.
also they
And
don't
of
have
course,
the capacity to do it for themselves.
but neither do a lot of voters.
Yes,
a lot of voters don't understand the choice, the consequences of their choices.
But now there's a difference because
There's a
we're looking at
fundamental
what
difference.
you've been able to experience
Yes.
by the number of years you have
So-
lived
Yes.
on the earth,
Yes.
by the number of years that you have been in existence.
So we're going
You
by
cannot
experience.
you cannot
Is that the
compare-
reasoning? What is
you
the
cannot
rationale behind
You cannot
it?
compare the sum total of what somebody who is 18 years old or 22 years old has experienced as opposed to that who is 6 years old. All the decisions in their life
if we
I would
set
like
aside
to
age and
have been made on
experience,
their behalf.
there's something called education, which is also an experience.
Absolutely.
The reason why somebody will be called a lawyer is because they have had the experience of studying and understanding this concept or this discipline called law. So they are better able to discuss matters pertaining to that particular discipline.
Or even if you
So
look at a medical practitioner, for
Anyone,
example.
I
what
chose
somebody has been
lawyers
able-
because we have
yeah.
one among us here.
Right.
So it's within that. I needed to understand this. It's within that context that they are called lawyers and they're given certain privileges. You can't take one particular page in our constitution and read it and suddenly become a lawyer. It's not possible. You can't go and argue cases in court because you read 3 pages of our constitution. It's called
Listen,
experience.
I'm sure if we applied this standard to adults who are voting, many people would be excluded. Huh? Why do we not apply this strict standard in terms of cognitive capacity, experience, ability to understand your choices or the consequences of your choices? We don't apply that standard to
Do you
adults.
really
Because if we did, a lot of people would be
You're
excluded.
you're silently advancing that agenda, but this is
She's not silently advancing the agenda. She's
overtly-
advancing very loudly.
it's
It's loud and
overtly
clear.
being and that not all adults should therefore vote unless we can allow
We
all
know where the
children,
argument
also
is
children to
going
vote.
because
No, political participation, I've said, is a human right. So this is actually breaching a human right, and it also goes
Should
against.
children also see collective positions? Should
Well-
they vie for leadership? I mean, they're prefects in school.
No, should they feed themselves and pay their own fees?
No,
Pay their
those are
school
duties.
fees.
That's completely different. Those are
How?
duties, and we shouldn't impose them on children.
How?
Whereas this other one is a right. Your right to public participation, your right to political participation, your right to make choices. Why should it be curtailed or why should it be excluded? Because you're a child.
Because
and
you're
the
dealing
reasons.
with
No,
a group-
this is the rationale of my
So a
argument.
child- a
the
child
reason, the
president.
main reasons for it, that the child doesn't have experience, they don't have the cognitive capacity, they don't
don't.
understand. Now, if we're to apply those parameters to everybody, then you would find there's a lot of adults that would also be excluded.
You
So why
also-
don't we do that? It's
also-
just because they're children
No.
that we're
No,
not
no, no.
letting them
also
into the
bring
fold.
in also bring in the argument that this child, you talked about a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, has not had enough contact with the problems of society and the proper solutions to them. Has
Neither
not
have a lot of
has
adults.
not come into contact
This
with
is
problems that you see
biological, it's
because they have been
scientifically proven.
cultured. They have been cultured. They've been sheltered. They're under the protection of a parent or a child who has or a guardian who has made decisions for them all through their life until 6 years old. Whether that parent or guardian is poor or rich really doesn't matter. It is somebody who has taken the decision on their behalf.
But they
This
could have-
child has not come into contact with the societal problems that would lead them to make a decision on who to put into power that could possibly solve those issues for them. They've not had that contact. They haven't.
Okay, but at 18, they definitely have. We've decided that's definitive.
Well, you haven't more, you've had more experience, and you
also
can
it
make
is
a
arguable.
better. You can make a
They are-
cognitive
they are-
decision.
they are
Well, there's
humans.
based on that
25-year-olds
because
who are
of
still
your
living with their
experience.
parents. There's
But they
30-year-olds
went out-
who are still
There are
having
out
decisions.
40-year-olds who still
And-
live
and-
with
and
their
if you're
parents.
talking
there are
about-
45-year-olds
so
who
that-
still live with their parents, but they're still
the-
able
the
to make
argument-
decisions
the
based
argument
on
you
their
should-
experiences
These are
that they've been able
exceptions.
to put together.
These
and
are
they
exceptions.
expect, yeah, for sure.
Look, the reason why we set those standards based on certain ages, it's accumulative experiences that human beings have had and processes that human beings routinely go through. And because they've understood this, for instance, it was normal for 13-year-old, 14-year-olds to be married off. It was normal. There's a time it was. Why did it change? Because of understanding that, look,
They
at
don't even
30
understand
at-
what's going on in their
They've not even
themselves.
developed.
Yes, exactly. Now, this understanding is what now influence some of the laws and some of the things that we have. Now, it applies generally. And when you say generally, it means there will be exceptions. Now, exceptions can't be used as examples of, as a rule. Now, Jerry's argument is heading towards this one, this issue of weighted voting. Yes.
Is it
We
now?
must also take
Yes.
into consideration. We must also take into consideration. I think
It's
we
the
all
weighted
know.
voting.
It's a
You
weighted
also-
vote that we're actually
Yeah.
discussing weighted voting.
We are
No,
discussing,
if we
but I
look
think
at the
it is
rationale
very important.
behind the exclusion of children,
Jerry, before
which
you go
is
to
what?
that, it's important to take into consideration that children, especially if you want to look at that age that you mentioned, I'm still going to that 6 and 8-year-old, we must take into consideration that children are also very easily manipulated. And
everybody is impressionable. Please.
children,
As
can be
adults,
I
look
didn't
at
say
us with
impression.
our brands and marketing and what it does to us.
Yes,
Everybody is
Hold
impressionable.
on.
But children, a lot
manipulated into making a decision that I have told you is right. We have children who now look at parents, teachers, guardians, people in authority from a place of respect. So if they know that you can vote, you have a situation where parents or guardians or these people in higher authority will be able to come and tell you, I know you have a vote. I can manipulate. I can tell you this is the way you should go. And by virtue of the fact that you respect me or that you see me in higher regard, you will likely go with and parents and guardians or people of authority know this, easily manipulated, and you don't want that to be. You're giving children votes, and you know that people can come and manipulate them. At the end of the day,
What
it
is-
becomes a power play of those who are in higher and who they hold in higher regard, and they would give them their. It's very easy to manipulate.
You
children
sound
at
like
that
you're
place.
talking about the general public of Kenya,
No.
because that is what happens. It's very easy to manipulate them. That's why we
Jerry,
vote on
Jerry, this one you have to
tribal
try to
blocks.
So
solve
throw
it.
children. So throw children
You're
into
more
the
or
mix.
less calling the entire Kenyan public
Children.
childish.
Children.
Yes, exactly, and that is not entirely true. One of the things that determines a child's mentality is the understanding of consequences. That's why sayings abound. Mtoto akilia wembe mpe. Meaning, let the child have an experience. That experience will teach them.
Because
It's not
when you
just
tell a
words.
child,
Okay,
don't
can we
climb
say
there,
10?
don't-
Can we
even
say
something
10
so
would be a
simple as-
reasonable age?
I'm
Even
actually not
something so
even
simple
going
as
to go
telling
by
a child,
age.
don't go there. By the time you're telling a child, don't play outside at by 7
7,
p.m. There's a reason you're telling that child that. That child does not see the consequence, does not see the end result of what could happen. And so they still want to go ahead and do that thing because they don't understand. They've not
They
seen it
can't
from
see
a
these
broader
things.
view. They've
Yeah.
not seen the
Okay.
end from the beginning. And here you are trying to protect them from certain dangers. You see that they could fall. You see that there could be a vehicle that will come and knock them down if they're not looking in both directions. You see that. They don't until it happens. When they learn that lesson is through, definitely almost always through a process of pain.
And
You
even in
know-
the teenage years as well, the early teenage years.
You see, when someone has a limited experience, their worldview will be governed by that limited experience.
In that tunnel.
If you look at people who've sort of like engineered what you call political or social revolutions, they target young people. Why? Because they understand that there's an age within which people haven't experienced enough things to understand consequences, not long and short, just consequences generally. You look at Hitler, the brown shirts, the people who comprise that, those groupings were young people.
You even look at Sierra Leone. The people who comprise the army of the rebels were young boys under
almost
the
children.
age of
They were
13.
young kids.
Yes, they're
That could
kids.
be impressionable, that could be manipulated
Easily.
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 Even in the DRC, this is the same thing that's happening. We've
Yes.
seen it in the militia.
You know the Chinese revolution that people speak about? This is something they don't mention. The red shirts, they unleashed the youth. They understood that young people would, of necessity, be easy to impress and to change. And whatever dogma they had, knowing that the underprivileged or the poor were in the minority or were in the majority, whatever message they were given, they were ruthless with their fellow citizens. The atrocities that were committed, and it was by young people.
Yeah.
Consequences would be realized 50, 60 years later when these people were much older. And some of them would say, I didn't realize this is what I was doing. Didn't realize.
Okay.
Let's open
so
up the phone lines. 0719 012 0719 And also you can comment on our Facebook page, Spice FM KE, where we're live streaming. Jerry, so advance this conversation now. Now start telling us the age that you're thinking of. I'm sure
we're not even there
I'm
yet.
sure you're not
I
even
want to
thinking of a
expound on
1-year-old.
your rationale. I'm really happy that the rationale you've brought to the fore is the fact that people
Is
don't
what you
understand
wanted.
the consequences of their choices, or children don't understand the consequences of their choices for one reason or another, whether it's lack of exposure, lack of experience, whatever it is. You don't think they should vote because they don't understand the consequences of their choices. Now, why should we then restrict that to the kids population? Why not extend those restrictions, those parameters, to the adult population, whereby if you do not understand the choices of your consequences, you shouldn't be allowed to vote?
The
That is a
other-
very
the
valid argument.
consequence of your
But
choices.
let's, what did I say? The choices of your consequences. The two are interchangeable. Yes. We also argued that the children are not emotionally secure and we need to protect them. Yet we expose them to all manner of manipulation in terms of advertising, material wealth, and so on. So it could be argued it's better than that a child is involved or is participating in the political process that will affect their lives than is wanting to buy Heelys or Nike trainers and so on. It could be argued they're being manipulated anyway by the very environment we live in. And then you said, children are impressionable. So a lot of adults. You'd be very surprised when you were giving that spiel, or when you were talking about the fact that they can be manipulated to vote a certain way because they look at teachers, headmasters, church leaders, parents as authorities. For 1 minute, one could be one could think that you were actually talking about the Kenyan population at large. Look at how we vote. We don't vote on issues. We vote in tribal blocks. Isn't that manipulation by leaders, people we hold in high esteem?
There's a global understanding of what that means to you as a person.
Look, you see, you are demarcating our voting patterns into what you call uninformed tribal groups. The world over, people vote by some pattern, and
It's not to say it's a good thing.
No, it's how human beings function in grouping. You can call it a tribe. If it's a group of, say, people who work in the stock market, it's a tribe. A tribe is just a grouping, a homogeneous
Well, that's
grouping, yes.
a very broad interpretation to fit your argument today, but we all know what we mean by tribe in terms of historically, culturally.
I
There's
know
even
what you
physiological
it's
differences
grouping.
in this
It's
case.
grouping, for
The
heaven's sake.
groupings,
If
yes.
someone finds themselves in a
Unions.
geographical area and that's where you're born, the people you
It
group
can be a
with
tribe, yes,
naturally
but you have to
are people
understand
from
some
there.
tribes
If
are
we
more
had-
entrenched than others in
If we
terms
had
of
a global
cultural
vote
experiences
today,
and so on.
Jerry, you would vote
No,
Africa.
there's
You'd
nothing like
give
some
an
tribes
African
are more
vote.
entrenched than
Says
others.
who?
No.
Yeah,
says
North African,
us.
You go.
You see,
We'd vote African.
as adults, everybody has a say, but also as children, they have a say. These aren't concepts that are being invented during this chat forum. These are concepts that have matured and keep evolving. You gave examples of Brazil and Britain and some other countries.
Scotland, Argentina, they've lowered the voting age to
Yes,
16.
because they've even lowered age at which someone can get married. They've even, yes, that's what they've
And
actually
driving.
done. They've lowered the age at which someone can actually be employed legally. That's what they've done. All right.
But why are we not allowing the children's voice to be reflected?
But their
in our
voices
voting?
are heard.
They're not heard.
At a
What are you
certain-
saying, through
at-
the parents?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm saying through the parents, because the parents have that duty. And
To express also the needs and opinions
and to ensure
considerations
that
of
this
their
particular
children.
individual grows up so that they are able to do the very thing that you're saying
Yeah,
they
you're
should do
saying
at
they
the
do.
age of 10.
And they
When
shall
you
make
have-
independent
have-
choices. It's
when
your
you have-
job as a
right,
parent.
When
Yes.
you have parents who are clamoring for better schools, or when you have children or parents who are clamoring for better health services, when you're saying that there should be an open environment for them to be able to do business, you're inherently also including the
So
wishes
we're
of the
making the
considerations of your
assumption-
children at that point.
You're
When they
making
get
the
to the
assumption
point
that the
when they're able
parent-
to make that decision on their behalf,
You're making-
not,
I want to hear
then they
Jerry
come through.
making the assumption that the parent
Has the best interest of
has
their
the
child
best
at heart.
interest of the child at heart.
Yes.
their own
That is
child,
the parent.
absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Their own
Yes.
child, yes.
You don't think so?
No, it's important that we explore that avenue. Not always. The parent could be voting on a tribal base, which has nothing to do
Look,
with the
there are
child.
always
But they also
exceptions.
they're
to the
thinking
rule.
about they're thinking
That is
about
not
their
the
future.
exception to the rule.
Any
So you're
person
saying
who
the
is
majority
voting-
of parents in this country do not know what is good for their children?
Yes.
No, I'm
Or
saying
they
they
don't
don't
think about their
necessarily
children.
vote for what is good for them or the children because they're so tribally driven.
Actually,
So
I
you
mean,
can
that-
see where
in that
maybe
tribal-
children might come in
that
and
is
actually
where
make a difference.
you
In their
are
tribal
wrong.
in their tribal thinking, they're actually thinking what's best for me.
Yes.
But it is wrong.
And what's best for my family.
What is wrong?
It is misinformed because you think if my guy is in, I will have, or I will get, or I
but
will
they're-
eat,
but
or I will
they are
advance.
not
Being
which is not the
misinformed.
case.
What they're being
Misinformed is
told.
not-
Of course they're
not
misinformed.
just told, they have seen
They've
it.
seen it happen.
Yes.
If my guy is in there,
Yes.
he is going to be able to provide
Why
X,
do you
Y,
think
Z
that,
for me.
Why do you think devolution came in?
Same thing.
Yes, to mitigate against. They said, okay, when you have a
Why do you
situation where
think it had
everything
to come
has-
in? Because of our thinking
We are
in the first
localizing it,
place.
so we are bringing it closer to you, so you can actually internalize.
Yes, and why was that? Because of our mindsets. Our mindsets were,
Jerry, these
my guy
countries-
has to be
these
in for me
countries
to
that
be
you
happy.
like giving as an example
have
or as
devolution.
examples.
Which countries are these?
Argentina.
Because today I said
No,
Argentina.
it starts
I've
with the
never said
UK.
Argentina
UK
before.
leads and then others
The-
follow.
No,
in
the
that
UK
order.
because I understand it. And
Yes.
in the UK, actually, the voting age is 16. Is 18, and there's been a lot of debate as whether it should be reduced to 16 because the 16-year-old pays tax. The 16-year-old is subject to the same laws that an adult would be, so they have to follow the law. So why shouldn't they have an input? Why should they be excluded from decision making or the decision making process? Which
This
in this case is
this
voting.
nation whose advancement you
It's
you
examples
always put
that
in-
I use. When I'm in England, I give examples of Kenya
No.
and Pesa Nini, you know.
Why are they? Why
And
are
tribalism.
I
they?
promote us, so.
And tribalism.
Look,
And say how we are ignorant voters back there.
it's not even
The,
that.
the UK is worse. The UK is worse in terms of voters. The masses are otherwise preoccupied with EastEnders and football. So I'm not saying the UK voters are more informed. Look at Brexit. So we are actually more politically astute than the UK. I'll be
There you
honest
go.
with you.
So the example being given today is actually Kenya being better than the UK. Whoa. Half past 7. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation this morning is: should children be allowed to vote or participate in electoral processes? Right? 0719 012 600. I'm opening up the phone lines for the next half hour. 0719 012 600. Also, you can comment on our Facebook page. That is Spice FM KE. Our hashtag on Twitter is Situation Room. Good morning.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Unfortunately, Mombasa Road is now officially a parking lot and vehicles are not moving. Everybody's trying to get in and out of the city. So it will be a tale of one road. Not two cities, one road. Gong Road, again, we're going to have the problems. Everybody wants to go and see what's happening at the show. I wonder, has it changed in the last 20 years?
Yes,
what
it
happens
has.
at the show?
It has.
All right. Of midget chickens and large cows.
You'll still find a big cow, you'll find, but then you'll find more
midget
traders.
chickens who lay.
It's an exhibition now.
Fantastic.
Trade
used
fair.
to, it's no longer, yes, it's a trade fair. It's not an agricultural show.
It's no longer an agricultural show.
No.
Everybody will be heading there anyway, and we already see the signs of such happening on Gong Road.
And every ministry that this government has will be represented.
Wow.
And every
state,
parastatal
every
that you know.
parastatal.
Somebody is
represented.
bound to make a statement on what would then later be called tomorrow fake news.
Kenya Ferry Service is going to be at the Nairobi ASK.
Sure, and the Maritime Authority will also be there. By the way, the show is informative. It is something that it's really, really informative.
0719-012-600. Let us know where you might be stuck. We'll see how we can get you moving this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Zichi Muga Ndu Oko. I'm Eric Latif and Jerry Thorne. We are in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. Jerry Thorne is saying this morning that children should be allowed to vote. It's a basic right. It's enshrined in the Constitution, which, among other things, says you should not discriminate on the basis of age.
No citizen should be denied the right to vote solely due to their age. And we can see this by showing that all objections to it fail. It might be objected that, it's not unjust so to deprive children because children as a group, they're unintelligent. As you said, they lack experiences, irrational, or already have their interests represented by their parents. But, of course, there's no evidence to support that.
Is it the right to vote freely or is it the right to vote?
What we have to understand is the right to vote.
No.
The right to vote like anybody else, because
No,
nobody
is it-
else,
no, let me ask
even
the
other people when
question.
they vote
To
and make
vote
decisions.
freely or to
Okay,
vote?
please
What
elaborate.
is the
What do you
right?
mean by freely?
Well, I'm talking about the basic rights that Kenyans have. One of them is the right to vote freely.
Is it really free? Is it void of any influence? Are you saying Kenyans are not impressionable? Or what do you mean by freely? Please expound.
Meaning
You make your choice freely.
yes.
You decide.
Without undue
Yes,
manipulation.
without
Well, what's to
coercion.
say that's not happening with the general populace
Without
anyway?
coercion.
Because if
What's
we know
to say
that
that's not
politics,
happening with the general populace?
I'm opening up the phone line 0719-012-600. Dennis, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you for the nice controversial conversation. I believe children should not vote.
Okay.
Children have to be children. One of the reasons why children have parents and they have been declared children is because they need to be taken care of until a certain age when they are declared to be adults. So I think the conversation much more could be at what age should they start, like being allowed to vote? Because maybe 18 years is too advanced. Maybe something like 12 years. Because if you go like in the hospital setup, anybody above 12 years is considered as an adult. So I would want maybe to think from, we need to do researches on children's integrity and ability to make choices, especially on political issues, and maybe review that age specifically for voting.
Okay.
Could you explain?
The children have to be there.
I'm a little ignorant. Could you explain how it is a 12-year-old is considered an adult in health
I think it's to do with the medication. I was just
Jerry, I was
thinking
asking this gentleman.
in terms of doses.
Because, it's because of the biology of the child. By the age of 12 years, you can actually get pregnant. So you can actually impregnate somebody.
So you're referring to the concept of a mature minor.
Yes, in the medical setup at 12 plus years, we'll always consider that an adult because those people need to be taught how
biologically you're an adult. You've matured, yeah.
Care of biological issues that affect also adults. So you cannot wait for them to get to 18 years and they're having menses, for example. They can impregnate somebody or stuff like that. They need to be taught the same information as an adult.
Thank
So
you.
in my opinion, children should stay children. There was a very good question that, I think it was twice asked. But, somebody did not emphasize enough to get the answer. Can children also become presidents? Will you allow them to go and stand for positions of governors and presidents and stuff like that? And everybody was doubting. So why would you doubt that if you think children also should?
Because the ability to lead, the ability to lead requires a lot more than the ability to express yourself and make a choice. There's restrictions on leadership, even on the general populace. But why do we put these exclusions just to children in terms of their ability to understand the consequences of their choices, whereas the same exists even within the adult demographic? And it's interesting you talk about protecting them. I find, voting is not work; it's an expression. And remember, it's still a choice to vote. So no child is being forced to vote. And if we take that into account, it means maybe the child has sufficient interest in politics for them to decide to vote. And as a result of that interest, they actually understand what they're doing. But I do agree with you in terms of the age of 12. That would have been my suggestion. And in terms of doing tests to try and understand if, how much a child understands the consequences of their choices. There was a case in the UK, sorry. But it did bring about a standardized test called Gillick competence, and it was to do with a child wanting to take contraceptives and a parent's consent within that scenario. And it was decided that if a child understands what they're doing, if they understand the consequences or they have sufficient knowledge of the consequences of their actions, i.e. it is foreseeable what could happen, the different options, the constellation of options that could take place as a result of their choice, then they're considered to be Gillick competent. And the age is actually usually around 12, which I think, it's not a coincidence that that's when the body develops into adulthood functions.
Janice, I'd like also to bring in Grace into the conversation. Good morning, Grace.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Mweshimiwa.
Now, Jerry, I hope this is not your topic.
It is her topic.
It is her topic.
Hi, Jerry. Have you been through an election in a countryside?
No, I haven't.
Next time when we are voting, you need to go down there and do a documentary. You come and watch, and I'm sure you'll change your mind.
Why? Please explain to us.
Reason being, that will, you are saying the will to vote, even being expressed by the adults, is not there. There are so many other factors that go into who becomes what in this country or leadership. If you have ever heard of something like, if the system doesn't want you, you are not going to be there.
Yes.
So you're saying nobody's vote counts anyway.
These young children, you want us to take them through that agonizing moment where they have to think and try to express themselves, and they are denied by the system. What will become of the emotional? How will it affect?
Or even their willingness to
Of course, your sentiments are underpinned by the fact that you don't believe in our electoral process.
Yeah. Actually, they won't even
maybe the Kenya
expressing somebody else's advice.
Because of the
But
fact
even
that
with
they're easily
adults,
manipulated.
adults are just as impressionable. They're all also expressing. Who says it's their opinion? Adults are expressing when they're voting.
Dennis, you're saying?
Are you going to just keep quiet and ask your 6 years old to go and vote? Or are you going to talk to your 6 years old and say, okay, this is probably the right person, so can you make a choice? They will be manipulated, even if you say adults are also manipulated easily, but they are mature enough to make their own decisions.
Are they?
They have decided to be manipulated, but children don't even have a choice to be manipulated because
they don't even know the concept of manipulation.
Nobody decides to be
Only
manipulated.
trust.
No, you decide actually. You actually decide, okay, let me choose this. Like, for example, right now we are sitting and we are saying sometimes we are cocooned in our tribal, like cocoons should decide and go and vote. When people are voting, that is very different when you sit down with the same people and, talk to them. They'll have very good reasoning, but they'll still vote for the wrong person because they have decided to be manipulated. But children don't even know that. Once you speak to them and ask them, go and vote for this person, they'll go and say, okay, this is my dad who told me this is my... They'll just go and vote for the person whom they were told. So they cannot even make a decision.
So effectively, it's leading to more votes for the parents. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Or even in those in positions
let's
of
also not
authority
forget-
over these children.
Grace, you're still on the line, and you are...
still on the line. And I was saying, will now these children be going for the rallies to go and be manipulated?
Well, this is exactly the point, Grace, because now the potential leaders or the politicians, those looking for their votes, will actually have to package their messaging and policies around children. So education standards might improve. There is that possibility. But Grace, your sentiments, I was saying earlier, they're underpinned by the fact that you have a concrete belief that the electoral process doesn't work in this country. That's what you're saying, basically.
Not for now. For now, maybe in the future, but not now. Now, people, it's all about manipulation. It's all about propaganda. It's all about the system.
What about the electoral process?
If it was a free and fair field, maybe, but not now. Maybe in the future, Jerry. It's good to also think about it.
There's no harm in the discussion. And what age would you recommend? What age would you suggest should be if we were to lower the voting age?
In the future, like she said?
Maybe very close to
Needs
18.
research.
Close to 18 and research. I like the idea of 12, though. Is it Dennis on the phone?
Yes.
Yeah, I like the idea
12
of 12.
years because it has some research basis.
Grace, what do you think of the 12 age?
No, maybe I could leave it where it is. Because
18.
in any case, even if we increase the number of people who go to vote, and the system is the same.
No, we've decided we're working on the premise that the system works in terms of the electoral process is free and fair.
We would be then living in utopia and idealism when we are saying that the system works. And we've invited Jerry to cross over to that threshold.
But Mheshimiwa Grace has actually brought forth a very important point. Dennis alluded to it, but consider the reason why we argue against this is, again, I mentioned it's called consequences. You see, we understand that children will be exposed to things that may be harmful to them, whether it is in speech. Why do you have parental control on TV? For the same reason. Why do we rally against social media in certain aspects? It's for the same reason. Because an impressionable mind is associated with the young. And the consequences of the impression and the consequences of these things are long and far-reaching. This is what parents... They may not articulate it, but this is what they're reacting against. They're saying, no. You don't want a child to be exposed to this, not at this age.
Because you also want to protect them to that point where they will be able to make those decisions and then want to participate severally after that. The danger that you put in place is that you expose them to that at this age and they run into those situations whereby they feel that they have been attacked or they've been endangered by certain things or words.
You'll scar
they
them
will
for life.
not repeat the process. They will never be engaged in the process again.
Dennis and Grace, I'd love to say thank you very much for contributing this morning.
Yeah, thank you too.
Have a good day.
You too, good day.
Why are you suggesting?
0719-012-600, 0719-012-600 is the number to call if you've got an opinion on this. And I'm thinking, guys, I think for today, we should have gone with Njeri and said, yes, children should be allowed to vote. This way, her agenda just dies.
No, it doesn't. What I want to know is why you guys are suggesting voting is an extreme sport and children should be...
In this country,
country,
it is
no,
extreme sport.
In this country, it is. By the time people are finished, they have
this
been
election in this country-
They've
So
been
should
run
we-
through the mill
Should
and
we
they come out bedraggled.
should we exclude those that are vulnerable in society, pregnant women, and so on? Given that it's such an extreme...
We'll be infringing on their rights if we
Their
exclude
rights
them.
at that age.
Well, you're
yes.
infringing on children's rights. Nobody should be denied this right solely due to their age. And voting is also an expression. When we keep saying we're protecting children, it's an expression and it can evolve and change over time.
I don't
and then
think
we
it is.
talk about... It's an expression. It's not work.
I
And
understand,
remember,
but-
it's a choice to vote. The
Yes,
children are not being forced to vote.
But it's not solely because of their age. We are saying because of their age, certain things have
Whatever
not
choice
happened.
they
Which
make.
means it's because of their age they're not allowed to vote.
It's
As
not-
a result of why you've said
Do-
or why
do-
we've chosen age as a parameter.
The answer to that
That's
is
something
yes.
Yes.
It is their age
It
because their age is associated with certain developmental stages.
Steve,
And these are... Please carry on.
good morning, Steve.
Good morning to you. Habari zenyu hapo?
Good morning.
Habari zenu.
Good morning.
Oh,
Hatujambo,
Sorry,
Steve,
I'm
habari za
Jambo.
leo.
Tu jambo, si jambo, mi jambo.
To Jambo Nyote.
Okay. Okay, I wanted to contribute. I don't have the problem about the age because at church we even baptize from 13 years. So about the age in voting, you see, kama mtu anataka kuvote, anaweza vote hata kama ni mtoto. Yeah? But the problem is the way we do the modification. Every time we do it, we started saying that we want to vote from 16 years. The other coming years it will be 15, like that, and it goes up to 10 years. Itafika wakati moja ambayo pia even the pregnant women watasema we want to vote because I have another child in my
Future.
stomach.
But why not? Why shouldn't we be looking at this? Why shouldn't we be
So
discussing that pregnant women should have 2 votes?
You will be...
No, I'm talking about having the discourse over it. I'm
Steve,
not saying it should be the case.
Answer that.
And that is why I'm having the problem with the modification. Now we do the modification of the age. You see? So apparently we should just leave it at 18. Because after 18, in Luo, there is a saying that says, inasema yule mtu mwenye ana mtoto ni mtu wa kufundishwa. So akiwa mature, akifika 18 years, then anaweza vote. But kama tunaendelea na modification, hatutapata solution. Because and that is what I'm saying, at the end, the pregnant women will be given 2 votes to vote for the child and 1 vote for
And
for
why
the mother.
shouldn't they be?
I think they should be given 2 votes then.
Yeah, pregnant women
come
should
on,
be given 2 votes. Basically, maybe we need to look at our voting
So
structures.
someone who's bearing twins should be given 3 votes.
Why not?
Of course. Okay, asanteni.
Asante,
sana.
Steve, thank you.
Asante.
In Mombasa, we have Samuel joining us on the phone. Samuel, good morning.
Good morning. An interesting conversation you're having today morning. I've actually just dropped my son to school. My son is turning 9 this year. And he had this conversation on children voting. And he was telling me in the car, yes, children should vote. Children
Thank
should
you.
vote.
Thank you.
And,
Children
I
want to
asked-
vote.
And Samuel, I'm sure
I
you
a-
asked
I
him
asked
why.
Yes, I asked him why. And he had just one simple answer that he kept repeating. Because we are Kenyans.
Thank
It's
you.
my right. Haki yetu.
That alone to him is reason enough for him to vote. Then he told me, Dad, but even in school nowadays we vote. We elect governors, we elect senators, we elect our class prefects through voting. So I think kids are exposed. A lot of things are changing. They may still be young and less experienced, but I think with the changing times, I think children have a lot of information. They are
Absolutely.
very aware of what is going on around them. Just some time back, he would even tell me the safest countries to live in. There's so much information children have. So it's an interesting conversation. I think it's something that we should encourage and debate it and see whether indeed it makes sense for children to vote in future.
Fantastic. And what age would you have in mind if we were to put a legal age as to when children can start voting? Your son is 9, so of course you'd want to incorporate him into that fold. What age would you have in mind?
I think if we were to go that direction, maybe we try from 16.
From 16.
Lower by 2 years. Let's work
Okay.
with 16.
Okay, so at least it's a start. What if I was to say that we allow any age to vote, because children, it's only once they're interested that they would want to come and vote. So you're not going to get a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old being interested. Of course, you're going to bring in the parental undue influence and so on, so that any age can vote. And usually what will happen, it's when you're interested, you make that choice. Because remember, we're not forcing them to vote. It's not a duty, it's a right that we've actually taken away from them. So it's not that we're giving them the right, it's we're removing that exclusion, which is enshrined in the Constitution in terms of discrimination. Nobody should be discriminated against for whether it's ethnic rather, age, race, health status and so on. So age is there, and we're discriminating against the children. And there's a lot we're losing in terms of the input. I keep bringing
Samuel,
up this
any
idea.
age?
I don't know. I don't know why I'm biased towards the age of 16 for now. I don't. My mind can't allow me to go lower.
Even after listening to your own son, and your son, and you say your son is 9, but he expressed himself very well and said, because I am a Kenyan. You don't think that you should now allow your son to vote, participate in next year's referendum, for instance?
Maybe the only reason I'm biased to the age of 16 is change is good, but I think change should be gradual. I don't think we should go to the extreme.
You don't want to shock the system.
I think we should just progressively, move until an age that is perhaps now agreeable to everyone, even those who are very critical about the subject.
Okay. Samuel, thank you very much for calling.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you.
And
have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
0719 012 600. Should children be allowed to vote? And at what age?
I think the way you're framing the question
is yes.
The way you're framing the question, I'm not happy with it. I think what I want to state as a statement is that no citizen should be denied the right to vote solely due to their age, or due solely to their age. And now that would bring children into the fold. Why do we exclude children?
Is there an age restriction
and just categorically so, and very casually, we don't have these discussions. We find it counterintuitive to have, to discuss children voting, because we have decided as a society that they don't know what they're doing. Now, if that is the objection to children voting, there's a lot of members in society who are voting age that don't know what they're doing. So why don't we apply these stringent rules onto them? Why do we not put these parameters on society or the electorate as a whole? If the reason for a child not voting is that they don't understand the consequences of their choices, I would say about 80% of the electorate in Kenya do not understand the consequences of
the people who are where do you get these figures from?
Exactly. Just off the top of my head.
The people who are responsible.
You heard
the people who are responsible for putting the mark at 18 for children, or rather to vote.
The age of consent.
The age of consent
across
the board. Do you think there were certain things they took into consideration?
Of course they did.
They were, but as the gentleman Samuel called in and said, things have changed. We talk about our children having undergone certain experiences or certain knowledge. Children today, a 10-year-old knows a lot more than I did at 10, just by virtue of maybe technology, the internet, access to information. The experiences they go through are a lot more different. These kids are a lot more mature than I was at age 10. And
they are more informed, not necessarily
more mature.
Now
they know a lot more
with that
than what
information,
you did,
they're able, that information can create maturity, because they're able to see different constellations of options. It's not tunnel vision like perhaps I was. I grew up and it was just VOK that
maturity isn't brought about simply by
there is an element of information and knowledge within
it's
maturity.
Experience, the combination of that and experience.
Yes, so the combination. So the fact that there's one element or there's one ingredient of this combination that makes up maturity, according to this station today.
No, it's not one. It's not one. It's a combination. The term combination. Yes, it's
collective.
Not one.
It's a combination of those ingredients, and if one of those ingredients has been exacerbated or exaggerated, or there's more of it, you can suggest that the child is more mature at 10 now than they were maybe 20, 30 years ago. I think that's a reasonable conclusion
they are
to
not
come to.
Children can't be maturer at a certain age because age.
Because you see,
crossing generations,
because of their experiences,
human development, we can't reinvent it. if we could, then children would be born and they'd be walking the next day.
You know, this
And the third day they'd grow teeth.
this debate has been
And the
framed
fourth
around.
day they'd be eating meat. On the fifth day they'd be getting married. It doesn't work like that.
No.
There's
You're
still
talking
the
about
process- the process of-
about physical ability to walk and
No,
so on.
the
But in
two-
terms of
the
cognitive,
physical ability is
No, in
not.
terms
It's
of-
underpinned by one's mental capacity and what you're calling cognitive. It's not as though you just grow physically.
no, but
Other things
we're
also
talking
develop
about
in their
Other
mental
things,
maturity.
other things happen at the same
We're-
time.
Yes,
Yes.
but we're
And
talking
even
about
the,
mental
the
maturity.
capacity of
But we
your
would
brain-
need a child psychologist.
it is
That's not the
important.
issue at
no,
hand.
but this is something
No,
that's
we don't
clear,
need a
and
child
there's some things that are very
psychologist,
clear
not on
about
this
this.
one.
We need
when
an
you
adult.
when you develop physiologically, there's also certain development that goes on in your brain mentally.
Not
Things-
always.
There's that happen at the same time. That where you were mentally at the age of 6 is not where you were mentally. Is not where you will be mentally at the age of 12 or mentally at the age of 18. That process also develops over time, and those things are taken into consideration when we look at the total development or reaching of maturity of a child. It is collective. All of
So
these
somebody
things
somebody
play a
has to be
role.
mature in order to vote. Is that what you're saying?
Let's hear from Nathaniel.
Oh, to a certain extent.
Nathaniel, good morning.
Good morning, Latif.
Morning. Well, morning.
Good morning, Nathaniel. Say hello to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much. The situation room today looks bigger and can accommodate all of us,
Yes.
except the children.
Except the children.
Personally, I'm afraid, and I would like to say that I wouldn't support the idea to allow children to vote.
Mm-hmm.
For reason being, even those of us who are adults, many of us vote but do not really understand why we are voting and why we are voting for that specific person.
Mm-hmm.
So it should not just be voting for the sake of voting because I'm a citizen. It's more of if I could give an example, my daughter is 2 years old. And when I'm back home, we play games. When I'm driving, she wants to be in the driver's seat with me, and she will not allow me to hold the steering wheel. So the fact that she's in the car and the car belongs to her dad is not automatic qualification that she can drive that car, even if she knows that if I hold the steering wheel, maybe
safe.
I can turn it around. Yes. Just because you are a citizen doesn't allow you to vote. If I was given an approval to suggest, I would even suggest that we raise the age to maybe 21.
Oh.
But still collect taxes from 18-year-olds?
Nathaniel, thank you very much for calling. Keep listening to the conversation as it continues.
The last one.
Yes.
This is Spice FM, Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. It's coming up to 8 o'clock. We'd love to know what you think on this. 0719-012-600, 0719-012-600. Jerry Thorne says we should not discriminate anybody from voting on the basis of their age. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Nothing's happening, honestly. Nothing. Literally, nothing is happening because Muthaiga Road is not moving, and this jam is feeding onto the Thika Superhighway, coming from the Kiambu Road junction. So nothing is happening there. Ngong Road is already clogged. So yet again, nothing is happening. You should have stayed in bed today, is what the popular song actually says. Except for Jogo Road, where it is moving slowly into the CBD from the City Stadium roundabout. All right, Mombasa Road, once again, nothing is happening. Definitely, the situation is cars bumper to bumper. You will not get out. Well, you might get out alive, but it's going to take you some time. All right, we hope that it gets better. Ngong Road, we know, will not move as smoothly as we want it to, combined with the construction going on with the Japanese and the Chinese left and right, and everybody wanting to get into the show today. So it's a pretty grim situation. But we shall make it. 0719-012-600. Call us if you find an alternative route or where you see traffic that we should highlight about.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Kenya's biggest conversation. Our hashtag Situation Room. We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We, of course, there are people who are commenting there as well. Spice FM KE will be sampling your comments shortly. We're also broadcasting around the country on terrestrial, 97.6 in Malindi. We are in Nyeri, 90.9. We are in Eldoret, 96.7. In Nakuru, 96.0. In Kisumu, 102.5. Mombasa, 87.9. Nairobi, 94.4. This is your best companion in traffic jam. Well, the conversation that we're having is regarding children and voting. And Jerry Thorne is saying that children should be allowed to vote simply because the Constitution has guaranteed rights and it should not discriminate anybody on the basis of their age.
What I'm saying is that voting is a right and should not be denied to any citizen capable of understanding a ballot and communicating how they wish to fill it. That is what I'm saying. And now, we exclude children from that process. Automatically, categorically, flippantly, we don't even discuss that children should be there. I don't know if this is a bias, but it's something we need to discuss. Why is their right being taken away from them by virtue of the fact that they are under 18? And usually, or the objections we have to children voting is that, cognitive capacity, they don't understand what they're doing, level of maturity, lack of experience. But these very objections can be attributed to the society as a whole. You'll have people within the voting age that fall into that they lack the cognitive capacity, they lack the ability to understand the consequences of their choices. So why aren't these parameters being imposed on the whole demographic, the whole voting demographic? Should we then start testing people and seeing if they understand the choices or the consequences of their choices, if they have the capability to make informed choices, if they have the cognitive capacity to actually fill in and tick the right thing at the ballot box? Should we then start doing that? If we're going to exclude children on that basis, and it is that basis alone primarily, if we're going to exclude children, why not then make sure that the whole demographic is tested so that if you're not intelligent, if you can't make decisions, or we perceive that you can't make decisions, then out, you don't get a vote.
You'll open up
if we follow that rationale,
who are
we
to decide all this for
decide who these people, what they
do or
not
can be brought.
We already follow that rationale. In fact, we say that people who are of unsound mind should not also participate.
Why? This is a good one. Why?
Because
why shouldn't they participate?
Unsound mind.
I understand that. Now, why, if you are of unsound mind, should you not be allowed to vote?
Because
your decision-making process is compromised.
Okay. Now, how many people's decision-making processes are compromised within our electorate? So if we're going to follow that rationale.
All right. If we start with lawyers, okay?
Oh, please, yes, City, kindly.
No. But you understand where you catch my drift and where we are going.
Jerry, you should have premised your argument on the rights that individuals are entitled to in the country.
Which I have. No, I keep saying we shouldn't remove, nobody should be discriminated against for anything.
It's not that one. You should have premised it on the second one, which says the right to equality, equal protection, and equal benefits in law. That one would have covered you nicely. But you didn't.
No, we all have this right, but we also have a right not to be discriminated against. So we're being reason we can't access that right.
Once you say in law, the detail of discrimination and everything else will be covered. You see, the point you make, not just as a matter of discussion, is a valid one. It is.
I'm glad you approve, CD.
It is a valid. It is a valid point because if you want your children to actually participate as citizens when they are maturer,
absolutely. If they start voting younger,
you actually involve them in processes, social, civil, civic, legal processes that we have in this country. That's to me. And the system that we have, the educational system that we're now moving away from, actually had this. In civic education, children were actually taught some of these things. And this issue of voting in the school, it was part of the process of getting them to understand how this process.
That's why now they're no longer voting for, prefect. They're voting for
class president. Yes,
president.
Exactly.
Well, I don't believe in a hierarchy in school, but we'll discuss that. I don't believe in prefects either, but that can be discussed at another day.
Well,
it's voting.
I mean, when you think about it, if that is a personal preference and you're entitled to it, but a lot of the things that we do are not premised on personal preferences. They are premised on what is for the common good. Okay. So my personal
but the common good changes and with time and generations.
Yes, but
that's why we can have referendums to
and
change.
That's why
human
beings have the capacity to adjust and to change. Okay. Now, if we're saying we want to introduce children to this concept at an early age, makes perfect sense. Remember, we had the discussion around sex education, and this has been fought. Many parents feel children should be taught this. Now, that is parents trying to protect their children, but essentially exhibiting their own biases towards the very subject. Because really, the child exists because of that very activity you don't want them to discuss and everything around it.
Yes. Not to say we should expose them to explicit and raw material.
But
knowledge.
I was very specific, education. Yes. So at what point should we start educating them, and what should the content of that education be?
Yeah.
That was the debate.
Right. If we're going to be educating them on what to expect in the future, or the kind of decisions that they should make, or what is actually right for the country within which they reside and exist, are those the things that now we start to teach them at a certain age, preparing them for the stage at which then they can make a decision on that, combined then with their experience, combined then with their ability to make a correct decision. Education at some point is necessary on those tenets, for then now you combine it with what they will be able to achieve when they reach a later stage. That is also very important.
It brings to the discussions a concept that has been on my mind, something called homeschooling. Okay, it's popular among certain people, and who's to say that this homeschooling is better or not a better system than public schooling that people go to? You see, again, these are parental choices. The children don't decide to be homeschooled. It's the parents who decide. Parents make decisions for children because that is part of their duty.
They care about the well-being of their children.
It's part of their duty. Now, so at what point do children begin to share?
Do you know, as absurd as this notion seems, you have to remember up until sort of the late 60s and even 1975 in places like Switzerland, women weren't allowed to vote. And it did sound, talking about women voting. 75 in Switzerland.
Yes. The Americans are a little better. They started in 1950.
But I'm saying even as late, Switzerland is perceived as a very mature democracy, very advanced and sophisticated as society.
It is a mature democracy.
But up until as recent as 1975, women weren't allowed to vote. And you have to understand the mindsets and the societal attitudes towards women voting then were as absurd sounding as us talking about children voting. So maybe when we start to see it happening, it becomes normalized, and we won't believe that we didn't let children vote. So at least we've started the discourse. It's important, first of all, looking at it from a legal framework, that children are not excluded from a political process because that is discrimination on their age. Secondly, I think children should get a vote. I think if they did, you'd find politicians might start to package themselves differently and appealing to things that children might be interested in, for instance, education. So it couldn't improve. There's the potential, I'm saying, before I get any rebuttals, there is the potential to improve education policies. And then of course, it's the fact that they are the youngest members of society, so they will have to live longest through these decisions, as opposed to a 96-year-old voting. And I'm not being age discriminant in any way. So they should also have a say in what's being decided. In fact, if you look at all the objections for excluding, or the reasons for excluding children, you'll find they don't hold much water, because you could apply the same to the rest of the electorate, saying a child doesn't understand. There's a lot of voters who don't understand. There's no need for people to pre-qualify as citizens to have any prerequisites to voting, age being one of them. That is my statement today.
Have you considered why it is these older people don't understand at that older age?
I didn't say they don't. I said they don't have to live too long with the consequences.
No, you said they don't understand.
Did I say they didn't? I said old people don't understand?
Older.
Oh, I retract my statement completely. That was a mistake. What I meant is older people, say a 96-year-old, in voting out of the European Union in Brexit, doesn't have to live too long with those consequences, whereas a 15-year-old does.
Is your right limited by your age?
No, well, it is clearly in this instance.
In this particular
in terms
one,
of voting. Thank you. I rest my case.
This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. We always love you to participate in our conversations. 0719-012-600. We are also live streaming, as we always do every morning on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and also on YouTube, Spice FM KE. Good morning. 12 past 8.
Calling all Spice FM listeners. Feeling a little light in the pocket? This is your chance to win as much as 5,000 shillings every day on the Spice Drive with me, Monique, by simply participating in our brand new Spice FM Mystery Voice Challenge. If you think you can recognize this mystery voice,
some of these people never got through where they did.
then call into the Spice Drive every weekday or participate via social media to claim your prize. Spice FM. Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
87.9. If you're heading to Kisumu, please tune in to 102.5. Heading to Nakuru, we are on 96.0. In Eldoret, we are on 96.7. Nyeri, 90.9. In Malindi, 97.6. And of course, we are broadcasting globally, www.spicefm.co.ke. In the Situation Room this morning, my name is Eric Latif. We have C.T. Muga, we've got Njeri Thorne, and Ndu Oko. We're discussing the Constitution all throughout this morning, right?
Right, apparently still discussing the Constitution. But here we are with a case most recently that has come to public attention of the presidential appointee to be the ambassador of the Kenyan ambassador to South Korea, Mwende Mwinzi. And that appointment now is being challenged in court. And it's because, or rather, the proposal to withdraw her appointment is being challenged in court. And what she has come through to say is that although she is a Kenyan citizen, she's also a citizen of the US. She is a holder of dual citizenship, and it has come to the fore that now public and state officials are not allowed to hold dual citizenship, regardless of the fact that it is in the Constitution that you may be of, a citizen of Kenya and a citizen of another country. Now, what we see is that out of that has come an allegation, and investigations then have been launched to the fact, or to the notion that there are other serving members of public office that actually hold dual citizenship. My question is this, as we come to discuss this morning, is that this is a presidential appointment. Any ambassador serving in any Kenyan High Commission or Kenyan ambassadorship in any other country of the world is a presidential appointee. Now, did we not know that this individual holds dual citizenship? Now we hear that there are other public or state officials who could hold dual citizenship. Why do we go ahead and appoint them and then get ourselves into a situation where we have to go to court, start having these debates, and start asking questions about our position?
But you say it as though it's a bad thing.
That what specifically?
Yes,
to hold dual citizenship.
No, they're going to court a bit.
No, going to court, but no, definitely it's a question that should be answered, because she had been appointed by the president to go and hold this position for the country. I go back and I say we always have to retract or go back in our steps and say, did they not know that she held this dual citizenship? Did they not know that she is a citizen of the US and a citizen of Kenya? And did we not know that the Constitution does state, and I will quote, pursuant to Article ATC of the Constitution, the provisions of Chapter 6 of the Constitution and Part 2 of this Act, except Section 18, shall apply to all public officers as if they are state officers. Any state officer or any person other than a state officer who holds public office is not allowed to hold dual citizenship. It's in the Constitution and it's clearly stated. So now when we are putting people into those positions, did we not know this information, or did we just go ahead and do it? How far are our ethics, and what is it that we take into consideration when we are talking about leadership and integrity? And following in Chapter 6, because here we're saying at least 10 cases now of people who've been sitting in government for however long time could actually be dual citizens, and they're serving in that capacity, and the whistle has never been blown.
When you
but
say
here
government,
we are.
when you say government, do you refer to people who are appointed or people who are elected?
Elected members of parliament. And
Public
this is
officers,
the case. This is the case that's
state
being brought
officers.
forth now.
So a public officer is someone who is either elected or appointed.
Yes.
That's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
It's prohibited to state and public officers, actually. So I'm going to quote a statement that was released by EACC, which is the one who that was served by Okiya Omtata, who said, please investigate these individuals, whether they actually hold dual citizenship and whether it's right for them to hold dual citizenship in the position that they hold in the country. And the EACC says it notes that whereas the Constitution provides for the right to acquire dual citizenship, the same is prohibited for state and public officers, save for a certain category, that is judges, members of commissions, or any person who has been made a citizen of another country's law without the ability to opt out. Now, we're talking about public officers, people who serve in the military, people who serve as public officers, that is public servants, people who are state officers. Those ones should not, unless...
Are ambassadors state officers?
Yes.
Apparently, yes. State of ambassadors are...
That's the interpretation that
noted as
when the Mwins is actually going to seek in court. But if you think about it, are ambassadors state officers or not? If you represent the head of state in a certain country...
You represent your country. When you are an ambassador or high commissioner in another country, you are representing your country. The laws of your country, the sovereignty of your country come into play.
You know, what comes to mind? Have you come across, for instance, embassies that represent more than one country?
Yeah, for example, you have, if you're just looking until most recently, you had one corporate in this country who served as the high commissioner, as it were, for the country of Ghana, because they did not have representation in Kenya. Or you have some of the island nations that are combined, and you have one high commission, like Seychelles, for example, that now serves for the island of Réunion and also that of Comoro. You have... Reunion.
No.
I missed it.
Eric, Reunion, that one.
And Comoros.
Comoros, that one, yes.
So you have embassies like that which serve for 2 or 3 countries. That happens. But still, it's still looking at the sovereignty of these nations. It's still looking at the laws, being bound by the laws of their home country, now being expended in the country which they are domiciled. Now, they're taking forth state function, they're taking forth public duty for their country at home. Now, when she was appointed by the president to take up ambassadorship in South Korea, did they not know that, one, the Constitution states that state officials and public officials should not hold dual citizenship? Did we not know that we also have members of parliament right now, according to the allegations, that are serving in that capacity with dual citizenship as well? And does it mean that such investigations need to be done then for such information to come to the fore?
So there's 2 things at hand here. First of all, you're questioning sort of whether due diligence was done before appointing Mwende Mwinzi, which of course would have been done, and I wouldn't be surprised if they already knew that she had dual citizenship, but perhaps chose to use this opportunity to give the judges and the courts an opportunity to interpret the law for us, because the law can be written and enshrined in the Constitution, but there's scope for interpretation as to how it should be applied. The second issue at hand is whether dual citizenship, first of all, most importantly, should be allowed when it comes to an ambassador where you're serving your state outside the country, of which I believe could be contentious, and there's points to be discussed there. But in terms of internally, so these MPs that are being accused that Omutata claims hold dual nationality, amongst them Aden Duale, Yusuf Hassan, Aden Haji Ali, Susan Kehika is also there, Jane Kihara. So if you're serving internally and you're an elected member of parliament or a member of Senate, should you be allowed to hold dual citizenship? And I think if we put a restriction on that, we can then start to limit democracy as we know it and the choice of the electorate. So what if the electorate wants somebody that has dual citizenship? Although, of course, it can be argued that the individual has the opportunity or should drop the the citizenship if they really want to be elected, the citizenship of the other country, the nationality of the other country.
Also, the other question is whether they actually declare this. You see, at some point, if you know very well that the law says that if you are a state officer or a public officer, then you should not hold dual citizenship, why are you seeking public office? When you're seeking public office, that's where Chapter 6 also comes in.
I think the interpretation,
Integrity.
is now where we enter muddied waters, because the interpretation of it had never been clear. The interpretation of what a state officer is or whom a public official is, and that's not clear, and that is what was bringing all this contention up in the first place.
260 of the Constitution says a public officer is any state officer or any person other than a state officer who holds a public office.
As though that explains it.
If you hold
that
public office,
muddies the water even further.
Even further.
If a state officer is, come on.
if you hold public office, irregardless of what you want to call yourself, you are a public officer. And if you're a public officer,
then you're a state officer.
Then you should not hold.
And if you're a state officer, then you're a public officer.
It's dizzying at best.
Well, definitely need some clarification
It needs
there.
clarification.
And I think this is a good opportunity for that. If you remember, under the old constitution, we weren't allowed dual citizenship. In fact, if you wanted Kenyan citizenship, you had to renounce your other nationality. Under the new constitution, there's something called implicit renunciation, whereby in not taking up Kenyan citizenship, or you have to now go and register. So if you have a British passport, or in Miguna's case, a Canadian passport, of course, that was the case that was most highlighted this dual citizenship issue. And what happens is you have to go and register now. So it's a right, but you have to go and register. And in doing so, it's considered implicit renunciation of the other citizenship. So it's interesting. Oh, sorry, that was under the old constitution. Now you can have both, but you still have to go and register. So I'm wondering if when there is even a Kenyan citizen, has she gone and registered? That would be telling. Because you have to actually go and register. You're not automatically a citizen of Kenya under the new constitution with the dual citizenship.
Members of parliament were asking her to renounce her U.S.
I'd like to assume
citizenship.
that I think when they asked her that and they found out that she actually holds both citizenship, then they told her,
Did
all right.
she go through the process? Because this was the
That's a
niggly
question.
thing with Miguna. Is she even Kenyan? And I don't want to attack her.
True.
Because I am all for her going abroad. I don't
it.
think we're in any conflict with Korea whereby you need to be so Kenyan, but you never know with global geopolitics. But I can understand why this comes into play when you have, say, for instance, at the moment, we've got that little tussle with Somalia and our maritime laws. So if you have somebody like Aden Duale, and he has Somali citizenship, this is purely hypothetical. He has Somali nationality and Kenyan nationality. Where do his interests lie if he was out representing us in a country whereby they would be involved in this dispute and they would be helping us maybe negotiate this dispute of our seas?
You're taking the view that citizenship has to do with allegiance. What if it's just a business decision? It's something that makes sense for you.
Absolutely.
You see...
So it might be an archaic law. It might be quite old and outdated. A business decision, you're very right.
You do have countries on this planet who actually make citizenship a business. You can buy it.
And also a lot of citizens were economic refugees. A lot of people moved abroad, maybe during the 80s and early 90s when there weren't opportunities here. So it's not allegiance at all. It's a matter of it was convenient. But you'll find people are also reluctant to drop certain citizenship, so British nationality.
But they have
because
benefits.
of the benefits that come with that. So for instance, the NHS or access to tertiary education for your children in later years to come. Yeah, there's benefits.
It's cake.
So does that say something about us not being proud of being Kenyan? Shouldn't Kenyans get so many benefits that you don't need the little red book in terms of a British passport? You're quite happy to just have a Kenyan one because you get all the benefits anyway.
It depends on how complicated and sophisticated your life is. Okay? Most Kenyans don't even have a passport.
To start off with.
Just let's start there. A good number who are eligible for having IDs probably don't even have IDs. Okay? So this particular discussion is actually esoteric. It's one of those
very
things.
Specific to
Yes, you're wondering, okay, why is there debate? Yes, if you have, simply, if you have allowed her to have dual citizenship, why are you penalizing her for having dual citizenship?
And it could be argued that it's discrimination. But then again, the idea of allegiance, patriotism, and statehood and so on comes into the
having
fore.
Citizenship doesn't mean that someone has divided loyalties.
Well, we don't know that, and one of the only ways to tell is through citizenship.
Yeah.
Well, we feel that it's a measure. Otherwise, we don't have a measure. We can't tell what's going on in your head or your heart.
You have sworn allegiance. Because you've sworn allegiance to one, you've sworn allegiance to another.
When you got your ID or your passport as a Kenyan, did you swear allegiance to the country?
No. Right. When you're taking your citizenship, you swear allegiance.
Okay. No, but I'm saying now, just like Siti has said, a lot of Kenyans don't even have passports.
IDs.
So even IDs. So now, how does that now affect your allegiance or your loyalty to the country? If you were loyal to the country or you swore some kind of allegiance, then you would be proud in holding the blue booklet, as it were, and saying that yes, I am a member of this country, as opposed to using it for the purposes of just travel. Because apart from that, that's why maybe many people are going out to get it, because they want to travel and actually leave the country. Also,
is the notion and idea of allegiance to the country slightly outdated at this day and age, with, sort of the fact that we're not going to war with other countries as maybe we did in the past? No, I think these laws were created when borders were still being disputed in Europe, and and
borders
so on.
are still being disputed today.
Even in Kenya,
what do you think?
definitely.
Yes.
But in terms of war and so on, I think it might be outdated. A concept, the idea of allegiance to a country, because you can't force somebody. You can't go into their conscience and force their minds. And also, you have freedom of expression and so on. So does that contradict? Maybe I'm Kenyan, but I don't have an allegiance to Kenya. Is that a sin? Is that a crime?
There are people who don't have any identification document that they're Kenyan, but they are Kenyan. So are we to say because you haven't bothered to get it, you are less loyal to your country than somebody who has it?
But who says you have to be loyal to your country? This is what I'm talking about. Is it an outdated notion?
No.
But now, for example, if we look
at why does it go without saying that you have to be loyal?
If you look at this case, for example, members of parliament are saying that it would actually hinge on her loyalty. This individual on her loyalty to serve the country.
As a state officer serving abroad.
As a state officer serving abroad, would you then be loyal to your country, Kenya, in each and everything that you did? Or would there be some factors of your citizenship to the other country that would come into play when you were expending your duties for Kenya?
And bringing the same even to members of parliament who may not also be...
The same members of parliament now are now under fire. They are now under fire because the same members of parliament who are bringing up these issues of loyalty and whether you'll be able to expend your duties as an ambassador or as a public presidential appointee for public and state office in another country are the same ones now who are under question, saying you have been operating as member of parliament or as government official for the last number of years, and you also have.
And if you look at what Omtata is actually raising, he's raising that issue from the ethical point of view. He's saying, look, if you're talking about integrity of our leaders, so as leaders, let's start with you. Do you measure up when it comes to ethics and integrity? Do you measure up? And that's why he's asking EACC, not even DCI. He's asking EACC specifically because he's raising the issue of ethics and integrity. Do you measure up to integrity when you may be holding other citizenship and yet you haven't declared? Yet you went and sought public office. You understood very well.
IEBC is the body in question here.
Even EACC.
But IEBC cleared them. The EACC government bodies have to be able to rely on each other. So if the DCI says something, EACC can rely on that information within reason. So if the IEBC has cleared them, why would the EACC then be investigating them unless somebody brings it to the
because
fore?
EACC should have cleared them first.
The EACC clears them first.
You see,
yes, but the EACC...
When you're going to IEBC, you have been cleared of all these things.
Yes.
So at the point you're coming to IEBC is saying, yes, I have...
No, what would the EACC be clearing them of?
Ethics.
If there are any
ethics
cases
and integrity.
That they haven't lied.
Yeah,
Right.
that you are one, you are Kenyan, that you don't hold dual citizenship, that you haven't lied on that you
So
haven't
then
been
are we
jailed.
saying that then that process for these allegations of these individuals now who are being investigated, their cases were muddled somehow and the due diligence was not done? That's the question that we should then be asking.
Maybe that's what Mtata is telling EFCC.
You guys didn't do your job.
Just tell us, did you do your job when it comes to these individuals or not? That's what he's asking. And why do we have this kind of issues anyway in public? Why should a public officer be subjecting us to these things? They should have just done it from the very beginning. That's the whole concept of having Chapter 6 in the Constitution. One of the shortest chapters in our Constitution, but yes, it speaks volumes as well.
It's very heavy.
It's one of the shortest. It's very heavy. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, 29 minutes to 9 o'clock. We'd love for you to participate in the conversation, 0719-012-600. Also on Facebook. This is Spice FM KE on Facebook and hashtag Situation Room on Twitter. Good morning.
Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Gong Road will be the focus this morning, as if things were not bad enough with the traffic that was already on the road. We now have an accident to throw into the mud pile, and there's an accident on the road. There is adding to the traffic. So I'm sorry, folks, but you're going to be there for a while. The police are already there because they're trying to control the traffic in and out of the road. But now with the accident, they will make sure that they get that out as soon as possible. Mombasa Road jam. It's not moving, unfortunately, but it will soon, and you'll get where you're going. It's Friday after all, so maybe you don't have to wake up tomorrow morning to get back into traffic again, so you need to live it up while you can where you are. 0719-012-600 is a number to call if you see something that we should know about that you'd like us to share. Don't hesitate, we'll keep you moving.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Join in the conversation, 0719-012-600. The conversation in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, on the line, we have somebody who we interact with a lot. And once he told us that he's seeking citizenship of another country, or he was seeking to travel out. Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm good. How is it?
I am very well, thank you, this morning. And how are you?
I can't complain so far, but as Eric has just put it rightly, currently I'm a state officer. But should I get an opportunity to hold a European Union passport, I wouldn't let go. In fact, as we discuss issues to do with Okiya Mtata, the question that you should ask us who are outside the studio is, are you really, given a chance, will you take up citizenship of another country?
Okay.
And for sure, when I went for one of the exams that would help me do the process of immigration, as opposed to finding a youthful generation who are going out for studies, I found people at, let's say, the ages of 35. Okay, this was not scientifically proven, but at least facial features would tell at times. You'd find quite a mature crowd waiting to sit aisles for purposes of moving out. not because they want to do anything else, but because of one thing. From what I gathered and from what I feel, I myself as a person, going by how the country is ran and how the country is moving, I'm not foreseeing a bright future for my two boys that I really love.
Question is though, Mike.
Uliza.
You are allowed to hold two passports. You're allowed by law.
Exactly.
But in your case, and you've said it, you're a public officer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you go and declare to your employer that, you know what, I know what the law says, I've just recently acquired another citizenship, and therefore I'm resigning from this position?
Surely I won't. Because you see, if I do that, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm allowed to, but the law would state that me as a state officer, I'm not supposed to. In fact, the question is, am I really truly, do I really declare my allegiance to my employer? That's the question.
Yeah.
And the question, the answer is no. I'm not. In fact, even given a chance
we are your employer, right, Mike? You please remember, you're talking to your boss. So your boss is here.
I like this. Now I'm telling you this in black and white. I'm never in any way, because of one thing. I mean, I'm not in any way or form proud to work for this country. Let's start from there. And it's largely due to what I'm seeing happening around and what I'm expecting of this country, let's say, for my future, the future of my kids, because I'm working for my kids. I mean, I'm really not working for anything else. I'm looking to secure the future of my two young boys. So if I'm looking forward and I'm seeing some dark hole, I'm not seeing some light beyond
the end of the tunnel.
I mean, do you expect me to swear any allegiance? Even if I swore, I mean, I can retract it. And I get myself a better place where I know my kids will be assured of a better future.
But do you
in fact, I'm already too late on this.
So do you think that public officers or state officers in the country right now, as we see things, should be able to have dual citizenship?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not?
It doesn't.
I don't see the reason. I don't see the problem with that. In fact, the issue of Mwende Mwinzi is just political, in my view. Because, I mean, I heard someone say a tweet from Donald Trump would make her leave the embassy in Seoul and go back to New York. You see, at the end of the day, the question is, even those that we have seated right here in Kenya, are they really even are they going by what is happening in the country's economy right now? Are they really loyal to this to the nation? Let's start even from there.
So the people that we have currently, are they loyal?
Starting with himself.
And for sure we are not. Right from my boss. In fact, I'm very sure my boss is getting contracts to work elsewhere.
Oh, wow.
That's the thing. So, at the end of the day, we are not even in any way or form loyal to this. You're just there to pay bills. And given an opportunity, you will denounce this citizenship called Kenya.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry to say.
Don't be sorry, Mike. Uko na uhuru wa kusema.
No sense of patriotism there. And of course, I like to mention that he didn't say hi to the ladies in the studio as well. He said hi, CT.
He was starting to do that, and then I think we interrupted him.
Right.
We derailed him.
Yeah. But interesting. Do you think that's a sentiment that's shared across the board, that lack of patriotism, and it comes down?
Why is it lack of patriotism?
Well, you heard the man himself.
No,
he's saying,
why
I'm
is it
not proud to be Kenyan.
But again, if someone has a preference wishes to live in another country, why do you consider it to be non-patriotic?
I think he was more explicit than that. In that, he said,
I heard everything he said.
With the way things are, I'm not proud to be Kenyan.
We should have interrogated further and asked him why he is not proud. Remember, he is Kenyan.
It goes back to the idea of being soulless and maybe our value system again.
So then, even we have to ask the question. Then, even going further in positions of leadership or individuals those who hold those positions, are they really carrying the best interest of the country at heart?
They're not
Or is it
loyal.
just a job? Is it just a job? Because then if it
Look.
is a job, then some of these tenets that we see then really should not be enshrined.
Eric
Some of the
mentions
questions
this.
that we ask, okay, then you can't hold you
Eric,
can't hold dual citizenship for this position.
Both
but
Eric
it's not
and
something
you,
that you're not loyal
Ndu,
about.
talked about this as being an ethical issue, isn't it? This last week, the NLC were looking for commissioners.
Yep.
There was a lady, this one stood out. She was ejected because her KRA clearance certificate, it was reported, had been fabricated. Now, a lie is a lie is a lie. So, disqualified.
Then,
Lo and behold, a day, two, reinstated.
voted, passed, appointed.
And who voted her in?
Same MPs.
Yes.
Same MPs.
So, why this duplicity? Because it's an ethical issue. And this one was clear. You know, it's as clear as anything. It doesn't get clearer.
As clear as water.
Yes.
Rono in Eldoret, good morning.
Good morning to you, Eric.
Welcome to the Situation Room. Say hello to everybody else. Starting with the ladies.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
City.
morning.
Good morning, Rono.
Yeah, City, when someone does something wrong, it does not mean you should do it. It does not make it right. It does not make it popular. And for that guy, the fellow who was is just gone off air, the one who was telling us
Mike.
that... Mike.
Yes.
I'm actually calling because of them. You can't be disloyal to your own family because someone else is having a bigger cake outside in the neighborhood.
Actually, you can, Mike.
Rono.
Sorry,
You can't. You can't. Then it stops being your family.
And you can't stop somebody
Oh,
feeling a certain way. I think what we need to question is why he's feeling the way he's feeling. We can't overlook it and force people to be loyal to Kenya.
It's the common trait in all the things we have been discussing of late. You know, we are shopping for how to apportion blame.
Yep.
Be it in education, be it in medical services, be it name it anywhere. But no one is taking responsibility. No one is pulling their own weight. You're not saying, what can I do to make this country better, or what can I do to make this society more tenable for myself, for my children, for my neighbors. I can give you a very funny analogy. My grandfather used to tell us that don't like your sisters so much. You'll never marry them. You'll have to marry somebody else's daughter. So there is need for us to pull our own weight and do what we can to make this country better, so that we don't come out being blatantly desperate and misplaced. You know, why do we stop people holding state office being holding dual
citizenship? Yes. Why?
Because you want to have a complete fidelity to purpose. You are a state officer. You have to be loyal to this.
But does having dual citizenship negate that loyalty?
Definitely, there'll be moments in the course of your duty when your loyalty has to be called into
question.
test.
But CT earlier mentioned sometimes you've taken the passport, the other passport, for economic reasons. So you have no affiliation, no emotional ties, no loyalty, and hence no allegiance to the country. It's just the fact that there was better job opportunities at the time, but you really don't care about them. There's a lot of those incidents. In fact, a lot of people went abroad as economic refugees. They don't have emotional ties to the country like they would to
Absolutely nothing
Kenya.
wrong with that, my dear.
So they
Absolutely. Once you want to become a state officer, once you want to serve in a state office, relinquish the other one. When you're done with your
Because
term
why?
of duty-
Because is it inherently because you are representing the country, and so then you cannot represent both countries?
countries.
Is that what you're saying? That now the representation of the nation comes into play? Is that what we're saying here?
it's more than that.
But
If
also,
you are going to, let's take a case of some of my colleagues, for example. An intelligence officer has to have a single-minded perspective to approaching duty. The moment you have room for bargaining, for debating within yourself,
it compromises your work.
All right, Rono, can I ask you a question? Huh?
Yes, please.
When somebody is a member of parliament, who is the allegiance to?
Oh God.
The oath of office. The oath of office is to the republic.
Yes.
My question was actually specific. Who is the allegiance to?
The caliber of politicians we have in this country, we can comfortably donate them for free to anyone else.
No.
Allegiance is to their pocket.
He has actually answered it very
They are very loyal to themselves.
and he's honest. You see, Rono is being as honest as Mike was. Mike was actually airing his displeasure openly and saying, really, this is how I feel. He is not the only one who feels like that, and there are reasons for it. And why I ask the question is because you have a duality here. When you're a member of parliament, you have to be loyal to the people who voted you in.
Yes.
You have to declare an oath of allegiance to your country. And then there's the unspoken oath to yourself, okay, which is often the corrosive oath. And that is what damages the reputation of these people. State officers, the same. They sign in an allegiance to the government and to the people of Kenya. But their activities indicate the contrary.
Yes.
So if you're talking about duplicity, it seems to be ingrained in our system. Now, when somebody openly declares, remember, this is a person who lives in Kenya, but they have the citizenship. She may have been born there. Now, what is she supposed to do? Unborn herself?
Well, no. The Constitution has provisions for that. In that if you can't remove yourself from there, then with her, I don't think she was born there. I think she acquired it, or I'm not sure of the details. But the Constitution does make provisions for when you can't come out. But I want to ask the gentleman on the phone a question. Rono, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Rono says that as a state officer, you should relinquish your citizenship if you have another citizenship. Does this then guarantee loyalty, the loyalty you speak of, just by dropping that passport? Do you think internally you've changed the conscience of the person's mind?
The thought train in forming your relinquishing should.
Does it guarantee it? Could you be doing it just for the job because you know you can regain it later?
Two things. One, have you ever questioned loyalty to yourself?
I don't know. No.
You can't. You can't question loyalty to yourself. Your interest will always override any other interest.
No, sometimes you let some of my kids' interests come before mine.
Because if your interest is not catered for, everybody else's interest is compromised thereafter. If you're not feeling safe, you're not feeling comfortable, then intrinsically your capacity to factor in the interest of others is also compromised.
It's compromised.
Okay. Well, in this case, for this lady, she actually was born in the U.S.
She was.
Yes, she was. So in this case, just as it is saying,
Can you
there's
renounce?
nothing that she can do
Can you
about
renounce?
that.
Can you renounce citizenship of
The
birth?
law, the law allows that.
Yeah.
I don't. I stand guided.
Does the U.S. law allow?
No, but why should she?
Why
No,
should she?
Even
Because
the
that's
Kenyan
what
law.
our law says.
There is a rider. If you can quote that.
A person wishing to
provision.
renounce his or her U.S. citizenship must voluntarily and with intent to relinquish the U.S. citizenship. They appear in person before a U.S. consular or diplomatic office in a foreign country,
Not
the
that-
U.S. embassy. So that you can relinquish.
Rono, you're asking about the Kenyan one.
I'm saying the Kenyan law allows you not to relinquish
Yes.
what you can't.
Yes.
Yes, there's provisions for that. If it's not possible by that country, yeah.
If you're a citizen of another country without the option to opt out, then you basically are allowed to hold the dual citizenship.
You are allowed that, yes.
Yes. So Rono, thank you very much for calling this morning. Thank you for your
Good
contribution.
morning. I enjoyed the conversation.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
0719-012-600. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're talking about several factors that are emanating just from one case. And this is the case of the nomination of Mwende Mwinzi as Kenya's is it ambassador or high
ambassador
commissioner?
to South Korea.
To South Korea. And the parliament that was vetting her, the parliamentary committee that was vetting her, came and said, yes, we recommend her appointment, subject to her relinquishing her U.S. citizenship. And of course, then she hasn't done that, and she hasn't been posted yet. But she's also gone to court seeking interpretation of this. She says that law applies to state officers.
She's seeking two
and
things.
this one does
actually.
not actually do that.
She's seeking two things: for that to be looked into, as well as to be able to retain her U.S. citizenship and still continue
to serve
in
this country in
this
South
position.
Korea. And then Okiya Omtata has gone to the EACC, has written to the EACC and says, wait, some of those people in that parliament who are voting in this particular matter also hold dual citizenship according to my sources. And he says, but don't trust my sources. Please, EACC, go and investigate and establish whether these particular individuals actually hold dual citizenship.
You know, this lady's crime seems to be that dual citizenship. And everything from security to anything you can think of is being argued against her. We had a case not long ago, a very prominent CEO of a government parastatal and a minister at that time, who were being accused of not only taking money from a parastatal, but taking it outside the country.
Yep.
Okay? Now, if you're talking about loyalty to a country, all right? And even in the recent past, state officers who have been known to siphon, who are accused of taking loads and loads of money. They don't keep it here. These are smart people who know how to take money abroad. Yes. Okay. This is money meant for the citizens of this country. Now, tell me, between this lady here who's being brought to book and being dragged among the coals, who is a better citizen?
Who is more loyal?
Who is more loyal? who is more of a Kenyan? Tell me.
So because you have a thief, then everybody else should now be let loose? No, come on. I mean,
no.
The law.
No.
When you discuss
if
somebody
if
who
this
has
law was so
stolen
straightforward,
from
would
it would
really
be very clear. If the law was straightforward and if it was demanding of citizens or public officers or state officials what they should be doing, it would be clear. We would not have this whole ambiguous gray matter where we want it to be.
The law is very clear.
The law has actually been further clarified. I'm just looking at a case here back in, I think it was 2013, where judges actually weighed into this and interpreted the law for us. There was a case, and dual citizenships are not eligible to seek election as members of parliament. The High Court ruled on Monday. Sorry, I'm reading an article, so not this Monday. This is a while back. This was determined by Justice David Majanja as he dismissed a case filed by Bishop Donald Kisaka Wasi, who was an aspirant for the Taita Taveta senatorship at Angano Party, shutting the door on Kenyans holding Kenyan and other passports to run for public office. Already the Constitution bars them from running for president, to be president or deputy president. The Constitution defines a state officer as a person holding state office, including that of an MP, by virtue of Article 78.2. A person who holds dual citizenship cannot run for effective office as a member of parliament. And that was ruled by Justice Majanja. Article 78 of the Constitution bars state officers from holding dual citizenship. So there has been a case to interpret the law, and it's been quite clear.
And they would speak until not very long ago, until recently. We had very many senior members of our bench who are not citizens of this country. They came from Ghana, they came from the
judges,
UK, they came from
even now,
judges are exempt from
judges
this.
are exempt.
From
even
this.
now, the law is clear.
But that
what's
opens
interesting,
the floodgates to this discussion.
What's interesting is that there's a call. Absolutely.
Yego, good morning.
Good morning.
Which part of the country are you in today?
Today I'm calling from Kambani, Matu.
Do you ever pass by Nairobi?
Yeah? Yes, I pass Nairobi.
Yes, come and greet us
And
one of these days.
I was thinking one day I will just come pass by with a calabash of mursik.
Mursik, absolutely.
Come. We have a seat here that you can actually occupy and be one of us for a day.
Okay, I will try it one day.
Yes.
So, my comment about the dual citizenship. I think any office, state office or public office in Kenya should be held by genuine Kenyans.
Genuine by birth?
Genuine by birth and genuine by documental. A person who doesn't think of green pastures outside. I heard Mike. You heard Mike saying that at the ambassador's house, people are moving for green pastures, not education. So we need loyalists to occupy our positions.
Mm-hmm.
I will give you one example, like the example of one of the IPC Commissioner, Grace Akombe.
Thank you.
When things got worse, he had to fly away to second home. Yes.
She actually did fly away.
She did. Yeah.
She fled away. So if she was a Kenyan with no dual citizenship, at least she could have helped us solve the problems of our country. Now we want the EACC to just crack down the whip to our parliamentarians. You know, the other day I was seeing Susan Gieka crying or things like that. and then Oledama commended that we shall win. So these are guys.
Susan is your ally in Rift Valley, Yego, no?
Is my ally.
Kabisa.
But
on this one,
if she is a dual citizenship, then she has to choose either to revoke the other citizenship or resign.
To get out of public office.
Because, you know, we are blaming the electorates, but these are the people being packaged by the IPC, being packaged by incomplete process. Why was Mukuna deported?
He had not registered.
So here, we are applying the law selectively. In fact, for the case of Wincy, there must be somebody who is financing that position. And the others have not been fed very well.
Because you're saying essentially, inherently, there should be no problem with her as this appointee.
No. He wants a loyalist. He wants a loyalist, and he has a very good point because you serve your country.
She should not be nominated at all.
You have your country's best interest. Let's take, for instance,
my stand is let these people have relinquish their other dual citizenship if they want to
serve Kenya.
But my question continues to be: this appointment is a presidential appointment.
Who vetted?
Do you mean to tell me that they were not aware of her status?
Somebody dropped the ball.
But the vetting comes after. That's why there's the vetting to check all these things.
Before the president appoints.
No, but the president appoints.
They should have been more.
So did they not know? Did they not know before this appointment was?
It shows that we do due process in this country.
No,
that the systems are followed.
No, it shows that we don't. Because if all of this hue and cry came after,
that's what the vetting committee is all about, and they've done their job. And this is where we've gotten
human beings conduct these vettings, and they will make mistakes, and they will have biases.
Or maybe the people who are actually doing this vetting had assumed that she was going to relinquish their citizenship.
Absolutely, and she's been given the opportunity to do so.
Now there's an opportunity
can't make decisions of national appointment
on
assumptions.
Speculating and speculating and speculating. The matter is in court, is it not?
It is.
Let the courts decide.
Yego.
Now, even this the situation room is our court. We will have.
Thank you, Yego. Yego, you don't want us to let it go. I think you made a very important point in terms of somebody has to be a loyalist if they're serving in a national, as a state office. Because you can imagine for something like, let's say, education, you're the education minister. If you know that you have dual citizenship and your kids can go abroad for school, or your kids have dual citizenship, your interest to make sure that it's the best you're giving your country in terms of sorting out the education ministry might be compromised, or you might not be that bothered.
Don't care.
Similarly with health, if all state officials were forced to use our healthcare systems, and the public ones, not the private ones, believe you me, there'd be a very different setup in the health system.
Above all, the appointment, as the process of appointment has not been followed. The president didn't follow.
Exactly.
Because there is a tradition in Kenya whereby the appointments of the like, for example, high commissioners, ambassadors, has been politically motivated ever since. We have seen former MPs being reappointed, former CS being reappointed with no process.
Former senior military officers.
Yego, thank you very much for contributing this morning. Asante sana.
Asante, Yego. Have a good day.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
spice up your life.
So we're told that there will be traffic, or actually there will be no traffic because the roads will be closed on Sunday on Jogo Road because there will be an installation of a footbridge along Outer Ring Road near the Tenor Estate so that we can get into some more traffic on Monday morning. So just to let you know that if you're planning to use that road on Sunday, do not. And this is a public notice from the Kura, which is the Roads Authority. And unfortunately, right now, Jogo Road is actually a total mess. So, I mean, putting one thing with the other. It is Friday. There's so many things going on. So you can expect what we see on the roads right now. The situation on Mombasa Road has been diffused to a certain extent. Traffic is not so bad, but that is expected. 'Tis the time, 'tis the hour. Moving into the CBD, coming out of Langata Road, coming out of the Wayaki Way, and also coming out of the Thika Superhighway, joining the Globe Cinema roundabout. Things are not so bad. It is as expected. We're getting into the weekend. If you see anything that's out of the ordinary, do give us a call. You know the number, 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to
Welcome
start
to the
your
final
day.
hour of The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri, 97.6 in Malindi, www.spicefm.co.ke, worldwide, Spice FM KE on Facebook, Spice FM KE on YouTube. You have no excuse not to catch us, actually. Also, on Twitter, SpiceFM KE is our Twitter handle. Please follow us, and you can follow our conversation, hashtag Situation Room. We're discussing dual citizenship and for state officers and public officers. And we have heard cases where, for example, activist Okiya Mtata has written to the EACC saying, investigate some of the sitting members of parliament, even some past members of parliament, because of this debacle following the appointment of Mwende Mwinzi as Kenya's ambassador to South Korea, and where she was told by parliament that she needed to renounce her US citizenship. But then Okiya Mtata is saying there are some members of parliament who are holding dual citizenship and should be investigated to establish whether that's true or not.
You know, when the fire comes from the other side, you know what is going to happen, as is often the case? It's going to be turned around. It's going to be turned around because then the fire will be seen and experienced from the people who were bringing it in the first place. And they'll say, okay, well, in this case, perhaps it's okay to let it slide. And that appointment will happen and she will go and serve the country in South Korea because the fire does not want to be experienced on the other side from the people who actually bring it.
But there's the law.
Yeah, there is the law. There is the law. The same law that we're talking about, which people operate under. And they, again, are now facing allegations
they might
of having
relinquish
served with
their citizenships.
Really? You think that's what's going to happen?
They might.
Yeah,
I mean, Aiden
Duale
has already come out and said, I am not Somali, I am purely Kenyan. So,
prove it, that you think I am.
So they might relinquish their citizenship to stay in leadership or to stay in state office. Although, as I think the debate should be, should they have to, and is it a reflection of their allegiance to the country? Aiden Duale might relinquish or deny any Somali citizenship, but who's to say his allegiance doesn't lie there? Of course, I'm speaking completely hypothetically.
Of course.
And then and then you have issues. I've brought up this example of the maritime tussle we're having at the moment over our waters with Somalia. If Aden Duale was involved in any negotiations or was privy to any information that would come out in a setting such as Parliament, could we be compromised in terms of our ability to negotiate?
There is a rumor.
But does the document...
I'm just going to call this a rumor. Sorry, Ndu, before you come in. Just going to call it a rumor that says that Somalia recognizes any Somali, whether you're in Kenya, whether you're in Norway, whether you're in Ogaden, that you're a citizen of Somalia.
So there he falls into that provision that exempts him.
What you're saying is not as far-fetched as it sounds. If you're a Samia in Kenya, you simply need to walk across to Uganda.
And you're a Samia in Uganda.
We remember the case that we all quote is a member of the Awori family who was supposed to be residents of Kenya, who was an MP and even a minister in Uganda. Okay, these borders that the colonialists set up, most Kenyans don't recognize. Do you think the Maasai in Kenya understand? They know there's some sort of border. You think it stops them from crossing and relating to each other?
Crossing is one thing, but they hold one citizenship.
Let me explain what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that citizenship sometimes isn't what you think it is. And you are talking about a piece of paper that legally informs someone that you belong to this country legally. And I am saying the citizenry of our countries will function as they see fit, irrespective of that piece of paper that you speak of.
And does this document that you have then guarantee that you will expend your loyalty for this particular country?
No.
Does it mean that? Because again, like CT said, we have very many Kenyans who don't even have an identification document. And they're Kenyans.
Yes.
And if you ask them in all thought, deed, process, they are Kenyans.
They're
100%.
Kenyans. Yes.
And they are loyal to this country. So now that they don't go and have that document, does it make them any more or less?
I think there is an element. If you refuse to relinquish a particular nationality, what is your attachment to that country? And you remember, you're a whole. So if you have elements within you that there is an attachment, whether it's because you need them economically, you need them for the future, or you have emotional ties with the country, that means not all of you is Kenyan.
Yeah.
If you refuse to relinquish,
You
the
expect
fact
that
that you
one
have
day
a
you-
dual nationality,
that's
that's
an-
fine.
no, that's
But if
a-
you completely refuse to relinquish, you are relying. There's an element of reliance you have placed on that. As you were going to say, one day you might need it, you might run away from the country. You're not bound by the borders as we are, as Kenyans are psychologically, where this is your country, you've
And
got to
were
do
all
the
of
best
these
for
things
it.
not
You
taken
can
into
run away and they
consideration when,
cannot
if
even
in the
bring
point
you
of this
back here.
particular individual,
Let
all
me
of those
ask
things
the
not taken into
question
consideration
again.
when she was
Do
appointed?
our public officers owe their allegiance to their communities or
to
to
their
the country?
pocket?
Which one? Tell me.
The law tells
According to
them.
the law, or according to
the law.
according to the
See,
law, or
everything
according to
else.
practice.
We know what the law says. I'm not going there.
According to practice.
I'm asking the question. This
They
is a
owe their
reality.
allegiance
you
to
know,
Kenyans.
you could then
Whether
extend
you're
this
saying that they
into-
owe their allegiance to their family, to their tribe, but it's Kenya. They owe their allegiance
But
to
you
Kenya.
could then extend this into, and I'm stretching it a bit for the sake of debate, then you shouldn't marry somebody who's not Kenyan, because then if your kids aren't full Kenyan, where does your allegiance lie? If you love somebody from another
Yes.
country, where does your allegiance lie? So it can become quite restrictive and prohibitive. And the fact that you have a Kenyan citizenship only, or a Kenyan passport only, it is in no way indicative of your level of allegiance to the country,
It doesn't.
to be
Thank
honest.
However, however, you're bound to it.
Exactly.
Somebody,
But having said that,
somebody
your
steals.
having
Somebody
said
steals
that,
Here
from
we
the
go.
public.
Your
Somebody steals from
refusal
the
to
public,
relinquish
and then you run away to another
is
country.
indicative.
and
Here
then
we
you
go.
Refusal
Here we
to
go.
relinquish means that you are
It's-
not.
So
It's
where do your rights?
suggesting
Where
your
do your rights
refusal to
begin and where do
relinquish.
they end?
Your refusal to relinquish
Where
can
do
be
your
very
personal
telling.
rights begin and where do they end?
the extent that the law provides.
And the law provides that you can have dual citizenship.
The same
And
law,
the law
that you're talking
says
about.
that if you are serving as a public officer or a state officer, same law, it also has a rider. Serving as a public officer or
If
state officer,
that matter was as
relinquish
clear
one.
as we're trying to make it here, these court
But it's
cases
very
would
clear.
Could
be
it be
Wanda.
argued
Clear
that it's
to whom?
discriminatory? It could be argued that it's discriminatory, which is also in the Constitution. So if there's two conflicting provisions in the Constitution, we're giving the courts a chance to try and
Interpret it for us.
interpret it for us in how we can apply this law. And I think the
But you've told us
discrimination
that
one
Justice
would be
Majanja
overriding.
did that.
Well, yes, but it
Yes.
can be taken to a higher court. It doesn't mean that his decision was right. It can be taken. I haven't read the judgment and the rationale behind his reasoning, but it is discriminatory, and perhaps nobody has argued that there's an element of discrimination of which you have been protected from in the Constitution.
You know, it's on the one hand you're given this, on the other hand you are denied the rights that come with it. So which is which?
Which exactly is which, and it needs to be very clear. It needs to be very clear, because those who these allegations are being brought against could actually argue the same thing and say that the law was not clear in terms of what they were and were not able to do, in terms of what they were able to serve.
You know, this thing that Njeri keeps fronting for, this weighted voting, this is a case of weighted justice.
0719-012-600. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning to you all. Thank you for your
Lydia. Good morning, Lydia.
I wanted to say, Miguna brought the talk about dual citizenship to start with. But the thing is that how can one single-handed person declare who the president is? Now, the court case had started, and Chief Justice Maraga said this election of the president should be repeated between Uhuru and Raila. But Raila wrote a letter to IEBC. His letter, I refuse to stand. Then the IEBC said, if you refuse to stand, you should fill a form with IEBC to say so. He refused that as well. So, see how many laws keep breaking. Finally, Miguna and they decided they will declare Raila the president at Uhuru Park. How can a single-handed person decide on who the president is? Chief Justice Maraga said the re-election should start for the two presidents, because the people should decide, not Miguna
Absolutely.
alone.
Lydia.
So interesting. It sort of reignites for you the images of Miguna when we speak about this dual citizenship. Very interesting.
One person shouldn't decide on the president. It's the people who should decide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lydia.
Thank you, Lydia. Have a good day. Interesting there. She's remembered Miguna, who of course was at the fore of this conversation with regards to his dual citizenship and his refusal to renounce the Canadian citizenship.
And what did the courts decide?
The courts decided that he had to be deported. He wasn't
No,
Canadian
no,
because
no,
he hadn't registered.
No.
The courts decided.
He
retained his citizenship.
Yes,
He could retain his Canadian
He was
citizenship.
told yes, precisely.
But he wasn't running for state office.
He was
He
not.
ran?
He ran,
He ran for
but he
governor
wasn't
of
running for
Nairobi.
state office.
Yeah.
I wasn't discussing
He was not a state
state
officer.
issues here. I was talking about the passport and dual citizenship. And
As a citizen?
specifically.
It gave him absolute right to be a Kenyan citizen.
As
just-
well as
by
a Canadian.
birth.
Yes,
Just by
and
birth.
yes.
This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, the conversation continues. 0719-012-600. It's 12 minutes after 9. Good morning.
Calling all Spice FM listeners. Feeling a little light in the pocket? This is your chance to win as much as 5,000 shillings every day on the Spice Drive with me, Monique, by simply participating in our brand new Spice FM Mystery Voice Challenge. If you think you can recognize this mystery voice,
Some of these people never got through where they live.
then call into the Spice Drive every weekday or participate via social media to claim your prize. Spice FM. Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Situation
FM,
Room.
Nairobi.
We are broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri, 97.6 Malindi. I keep repeating this just so you know that wherever you are in the country, you can always catch Spice FM. The Situation Room conversation continues, and this time let's go back to the rights. Actually, we are focusing on the rights this morning as well, right? It's all about rights. People have been fired, CT, this week. Many
Yes.
have lost their jobs.
The question that we are even debating is there difference between unemployment and joblessness, or is unemployment the word that actually describes joblessness? Why it's an issue? I mean, the statistics are a bit alarming in this country, because one, the labor force that we have in this country, this is I'm talking about 2018 data, is 19.6, and 40% 2013 statistics. 40% are unemployed. Now, if you look at current statistics, it indicates you that the unemployment rate in Kenya is going down. And I had asked who prepared this. Because every indication, when the growth of the economy slows down, unemployment actually tends to take force. But if you look at this country, who is the main employer? The government. Question, is the government laying off people? Private sector, that's obvious. This week alone we had around 800 people unemployed. Then, last week and the week before, there was the issue of donor-funded work, especially in the health field, especially in the field of HIV and AIDS. There were cuts in funding. This is what was announced, but the previous year there was a 40% cut. This year, the additional cut was something like 22%. Now, the funders promised that there would be money for drugs, but personnel would have to go. Unemployment wouldn't be an issue if it simply meant you didn't have a job, because it's assumed that if you didn't have a job, well, you could always get another one. The thing is, you can't get another one that easily. Number two, there's a livelihood that people derive from employment. But I want to discuss not the unemployment per se. I want to discuss what it means in terms of your rights as a Kenyan. What unemployment entails, what it is, what employment entails, and what it is that happens when you're unemployed, and how it is that your rights are actually not just interfered with, but they're completely abrogated. When someone renders you unemployment or brings about a situation that causes you unemployment, they are actually interfering with your fundamental rights. There are around 21 of them that we sort of like subscribe to in this country. And there is hardly anything in this country that abrogates almost all of them, like unemployment or joblessness. That's what I'm saying.
Of course, I'm going to bring in the basic argument for unemployment at this day and age, which is the technological disruption, that is automation. So a number of different organizations have been affected by the fact that things can now be done more efficiently and can be done because of new developments in technology. Things become digitized and computerized, so you don't need the manpower behind running some machinery or some processes, and this has led to job losses. That is one explanation. Of course, it doesn't quite cut the mustard, because we do know that in terms of the economy, it's not doing as well as it could, whereby a lot of companies are feeling they can't foot the bill for all these guys. You're talking about this is a spillover, your conversation is a spillover from the 800 jobs that were lost through Sports Pesa, or this is generally...
It's not a spillover.
No, the conversation.
The conversation, that is the current example that I'm giving. But
Right.
if this discussion goes way back to just the number of people who are qualified, gone through our universities and cannot get jobs, and the numbers keep increasing. It starts there.
I think with better planning...
Sorry?
I was going to say, with better planning, the government can actually absorb the graduates that come out of university, and that planning goes back to what you talk about in terms of actually almost prescribing what people should be studying at university, so that it's in tandem with the direction or the trajectory of our development as a country.
I want to understand something. When you say automation, how exactly in this country does automation
For
bring about
instance,
unemployment?
Okay, I'll give you a very basic example. For instance, when ATMs came into place, so these are the cash machines where you can go and withdraw money outside the bank. You no longer need that bank teller, that extra bank teller at the bank to withdraw cash from. That's a very basic example for automation. But you can understand there's a lot of processes within organizations that are now being digitally managed. So you don't need the amount of manpower that you had before. In the UK, sorry, I'm going to give this example. If you walk...
And when you finish the UK, move to Sweden. Carry on.
Scandinavia and the UK.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, you find, for instance, when you walk into a supermarket now, there's no cashiers at the teller, because everything is automated. You yourself, the barcode is there, you put the goods through yourself, and then you walk out. So even basic jobs like that have been taken over by automation. That's what I mean by the technological
Would you
disruption.
say that the UK has a growing population or a declining one?
2.4 children, so growing. Or I
Growing.
think
In which
pretty. If it's 2.4, it means it's growing by 0.4 because 2 it means
Yes.
you both So 2.4 children. Well, those were the statistics a while back, but no, I don't think the population is growing at the rate at which Kenya's population is growing.
Yes, so automation would make sense.
It's
They
an
would put it-
evolution of the job market.
So do you want us not to embrace this digital technology? And I'm not saying this is the only reason for joblessness or job cuts.
Isn't actually because
It is one of the main
it's an
reasons.
evolution.
Let's not
It is.
overlook
In this
it.
country, it isn't.
It's an evolution of the job process.
I'm just giving you an
had it.
example where a bank teller, a very simple one that everybody can understand, a bank teller would lose their job or the job would no longer exist because we now have cash machines that dispense the money.
When we look
Or
at
ATMs.
when we look at the major job losses in this country or what have rendered people unemployed, the reasons at which we look at have not inherently been
hardships.
automation.
It's economic
it has been
hardship.
hardships by
But it is
companies and
important that we highlight
organizations
that automation-
they're not able to meet their overheads anymore.
Mhm.
They are there's a stricter in some of the cases that we've seen this week. There have been a difficult business environment. There have been high taxes, so they're not able to continue the business, and then they have rendered people unemployed. But in most cases, it's that they've not been able to meet their overheads. There's not been enough money coming in for them to be able to manage, and so now they have had to render people
let
unemployed.
people go.
Except in some cases where we see, like for example, with banks where they are making profits, but still they let people go. So maybe automation comes in there, because I would have to ask myself, what would happen in that case? Whereby we are seeing where we are seeing.
There's no bank that has automated to a level where 200 jobs need to go.
How do you know this? On what evidence do you make that statement?
Because they haven't given us that evidence.
Well, they don't have to. They don't have to explain themselves. This is a private company.
Yes, but
they should call you, Eric, and say, here's the evidence.
You have told us about
what
ATMs.
Do you think their reasons are?
ATMs.
That was a very basic
You
example to
can
try and
see
explain
ATMs.
the
It is a weak example.
You know people who
I
work
think
in
it was a very
banks.
strong example. Excuse me.
You know
Thank you
people-
very
No,
much.
it's a
It was
very weak
It's a
example.
very good example. Banks
You-
don't
you-
have to
you
call
are
you and tell you-
infringing
you
on my
cannot-
rights to
hold on.
express my view.
Jerry,
Listen,
you
cannot-
say it is strong.
Jerry.
I
You know
say
what?
yes.
You
You say
cannot
so.
overlook the fact that automation has something to do with it. I'm not
It
saying
doesn't.
it is.
In this country, no.
But
No.
I've just given you an example of when
No.
it's happened.
It may be the
250 jobs in
excuse.
one
The
bank.
it may be the excuse the banks
why
use,
is
but it isn't.
Why is it they're cutting jobs? I mean, these are profit-making entities. They don't have to
That's
employ
it.
anybody.
Actually,
so
they
if
do.
they can find mechanisms
They do.
and ways to be more efficient with employing less people, they will do so. Clearly, that is what has happened.
But it has
Because
nothing
why
to
are
do-
they laying these people off?
So why automate? Why do you bring in automation?
Because you move with the times.
Look,
seriously?
how long have ATMs been
Get
in this
out
country?
of here, man.
when I talk about evolution of the job market, all right? So you talk about, yes, you can see the ATMs coming in, but also there are new jobs that have come in with that same technology.
More banks have
But
come in.
people haven't been
So
training
you-
for those
you've-
jobs.
You've got
Where did
new
you
areas.
where did you get that from?
No,
That-
in terms of automation, people have not been training for those jobs.
Which jobs?
The ones that you need to run the processes
You see?
automatically.
No,
You see?
no, come on.
Perhaps.
Is that the reason why
these are all
No,
factors
you're
that-
taking out an official expedition,
Listen,
Is
Jerry.
that why we see job cuts? We need to look very closely and clearly at the reasons why we see job cuts, or why then we are rendering people unemployed.
It's not on- it's not
in this
automation.
in this country, most of the cases that we see is because companies, organizations have not been able to meet their overheads. They have not been able to. Either they are not doing business
They can't sustain.
they cannot sustain their.
That
They have
is how
not
it
been
was
able to
explained
reach.
with
They have
this
not been able
week's
to reach
800 people were
optimum
laid
levels.
off.
Optimum
Yes.
levels of business operation in the country. They've not been able to do that, and so they cannot sustain their workforce. And unfortunately, in situations like that, the first people to go, or the first measures that are
workforce.
taking place, is the workforce. They are the ones that are directly affected first. Now, when we ask about rights, it is your right. It goes against your right. But what then is the organization or the company supposed to do when they give forth the reason that they cannot keep these people in
Who's the
employment
custodian of your right?
because of what they are feeling?
Look,
of the noose that has been tied around the corporate neck per
Do you
se.
know why
as
this,
it were.
you know why this
A company
water
has
really
no
gets
duty.
muddied? This water really gets muddied. Yeah? What you've explained is the traditional reason that organizations give for laying off people. There isn't enough money. It's not difficult to understand. With our banks, they have ever increasing profits and they're laying off people. That one, someone needs to explain to me. What is it?
It's automation.
Explain. What you are declaring profits that are mind-boggling, and as a result of these mind-boggling profits, you're laying off people. How?
laying off people is actually helping you to make those profits because you've streamlined your operations.
You know,
and streamlining your operations means that you've cut down
Jerry
your
has
overhead.
been
And maybe brought in some computers and
Jerry
automation.
has been arguing from time immemorial
You've outsourced some of
that
these
these are
services as
business
well.
people and they must make money. Countries that understand these things and are more advanced than us have what they call antitrust laws. You know why? To curb these excesses that the corporate sector are likely to have. When I say excesses, the manifestation of excessive and primitive greed to the level that they do is curbed. Even if you're a business entity whose sole purpose is to make money, you have a social obligation. You may think you don't, but you do. And if you want the business to thrive, you had better have it. Because the very people you think of, these very people who are supposedly your employees, these are also your clients. And as are their relatives and as are everybody else in the country who looks at you. So you have a responsibility to ensure that the things you do resonate well with these people. Now, I am saying that if you look at this, and if you look at those who allow these things to happen, you find that the very people who are charged with protecting the citizenry and ensuring that their rights are adhered to are the very people who are ensuring these rights are abused. If someone doesn't have a job, the first thing that suffers is your dignity. Because you're talking about right to assembly, right to do this, right to seek a clean employment. It's interesting that in pursuing these very rights that we're speaking of, if the government enforced, this is also job creation. And this one, Jerry was spot on when she says that if the government genuinely wanted and planned better, they could employ. I agree with her, they could. They could. And not only could they employ, they could ensure that the private sector also employs. When you declare that amount of money, say, okay, good, we've seen, this is what you're doing. Profits, good. Shareholders, good. But this is what you also need to do. We've had countries, people call it affirmative action in terms of looking at it is affirmative action because you can ensure that people get jobs. You can ensure. And in so doing, you will be upholding their rights.
Unless we go into manufacturing and things like that, it's going to be very difficult for the government and the idea of job creation. But before you go into that, I want to challenge you on this notion that companies have a social obligation.
Yes.
Where does that stem from? In terms of that's your hunch, that's how you feel, those are your sentiments?
No, it isn't my sentiment. It's just a reality. Businesses that are developed and understand these things more do it all the time. Tell me, why do you think people who've made their money in business and wealth, why do you think they have foundations? What do you think it is for?
For the surpluses
tax
and excesses
evasion,
perhaps? To help other people.
Yes, there could be
tax evasion,
but essentially, yes, they could. But essentially, that money is being taken and given out again, is it not?
Yes. Redistribution, Is
it not?
Yes.
And the distribution also causes employment. Like when you talk about donor funding, a lot of it comes from these foundations. And they do create employment. The very things that we're saying. And everything that comes with that.
But is this duty we talk about, where it's underpinned by what? Law, ethics, religion, what? Is there a duty, or do you feel that companies should have a duty?
No, it is good business thinking, because any business entity needs a good image. It provides you with the image that you need for purposes of your business.
It depends on their consumers. If we as Kenyans don't give a damn about the ethics of the company, then really the company shouldn't care. We will still consume their products and services.
Repeat that statement again and give me an example of a company that would apply to.
Okay, so for instance, in the UK, you have the fair trade. No, seriously.
Please
you have
do
ethical.
not forget to follow up with the Scandinavian countries.
You have ethical consumers whereby fair trade, which was a stamp of acknowledgement that the product, usually an agricultural product, had been fair in terms of even to the farmer. They weren't brokers who were exploiting farmers. And you found people wanted to buy fair trade because the consumers were ethical. And it was important to them as to the sourcing of the product. Similarly, they stopped buying clothes that were made in, say, Vietnam from Gap because they were using child labor. And you find those are ethical consumers. Now, in Kenya, unless we, the buyers, are ethical, we're not going to move these banks or these companies to be ethical, because we'll still buy their products no matter what they're doing. So it comes back to us, the individuals in Kenya.
The reason why the citizenry of these wonderful countries that you speak of are able to do it is because they have governments who understand that an atmosphere for this must be created. Remember, these rights we speak of that we even imported and or were imposed upon us, some of these countries had to go through a lot of upheavals and suffering before the so-called ordinary citizen forced the leadership to do things in a certain way. But they suffered.
There's a social awareness that they have.
Yes, they do. And I'm saying the social awareness came about because of what you are suggesting. Now, we don't have to necessarily go through the human beings being what they are we do. But in theory, we know the roadmap and we know what needs to be done. You see, the unemployment in this country would not be an issue if people who have worked for 100 years were suddenly let go of. It wouldn't matter because they would still be unemployed, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they've worked. The unemployment here is an issue because you have people who had hopes, and that's why they studied, they did what they did in the hope and the expectation and anticipation that they would get jobs. And then there are those who actually get those jobs and then lose them, and they're all young.
When you started this conversation, City, you mentioned two words. That's unemployment and joblessness.
Yes.
And you said there was a distinction.
There's a distinction. If today I retire, I will be unemployed. But I may not be jobless. I have cows that I may be looking after. I may have a farm that I'm pretending to actually till. Okay, I will have something to do. I'm not jobless.
Yes,
but we have a situation in this country where people are both
unemployed
and jobless. Yes, you don't have something to do, and you don't have prospects of having something else to do.
So that's a situation of hopelessness as well.
Thank you very much. You've understood me perfectly.
So this situation is what you're saying is basically abrogating our rights.
Yes.
The rights of the citizens of the country.
When you think of situations even in the West, like in the UK, for instance, okay?
Yes.
When in addition to joblessness, they have homelessness. Yes.
The situation room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Please join in 0719 012 600.
How well do you know your country? Given a chance, where would you go? Not so many places, huh? Would you even know how to get there? Yes? No? Maybe? I don't know. Well, oh ye gallivanters and tourists alike, here is your chance to not only know, but also visit amazing destinations in Kenya with complete recommendations, guides, and tips on accommodation spots, wellness stops, and food joints all over Kenya. How, you ask? Courtesy of the biggest locally targeted tours and travel magazine, Travelog. Travelog is your monthly pull-out magazine in the Standard newspaper every first Thursday of the month. With Travelog, enjoy the beauty of life that Kenya has to offer. Visit exotic and hidden destinations, be part of amazing conservation campaigns and projects as you simply enjoy Kenya. It's our way of putting Kenya on the map. Grab your copy and be aboard the fun wagon as you improve the quality of your local travel experiences. Travelog, Jione Kenya. Tired of living your same old life? Need to spice it up and add some flavor? Well, we can help you go from living to living it up. East Africa, are you ready to be a part of the most vibrant entertainment scene with the best, freshest music, travel tips and destinations, fashion, tech and health trends, as well as your favorite celebrities' lifestyles? Introducing your favorite entertainment magazine, Pulsar, the ultimate all-in-one guide that will give you more meaning to life. Catch up with your celebrity writers and contributors to stay up to date with what's happening around you, where and how you can be a part of all that. The lifestyle guide that has been missing in your life. Pulsar. Live it up.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
A much better situation on Mombasa Road.
Traffic.
Traffic approaching the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, doing much better at this time of the morning. Thika Road inbound from Safari Park is unusually thick at this time of the day. Quite a lot of traffic. We don't know what's going on now. There's a redesign of Outer Ring that is affecting traffic coming back onto the superhighway. So maybe that affects how you will be able to get in and out of the CBD right now. All right, Ngong Road in both directions, traffic is actually building up, and we're going to see this through the rest of the day. Remember that you cannot access Jogo Road in the morning of the actually the whole day of the 6th of October, which is Sunday. So you need to now prepare for other means to get where you're going, not using Jogo Road. Apart from that, for a Friday morning, everything seems to be moving smoothly. Let's see what the situation looks like through the rest of the day. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Thank you very much for joining us today and every morning. It's 25 minutes to 10 o'clock. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Jerry Thorne, C.T. Muga, Ndu Oko. I'm Eric Clarty. I'm opening up the phone lines, joining in this conversation. Joblessness, unemployment, homelessness. 0719 012 600. C.T.
The question of dignity, we use the word, but sometimes it's not fully comprehended. You see, when you talk about someone having purpose and having a value system, a lot of it has to do with the dignity that you feel is accorded to you. You have your own personal dignity. You have your own value of stature, but there's that which is accorded to you. Now, unfortunately, a lot of it is attached to what you do, the job you do, where you do it. In this country, it forms the basis of who you are.
And in fact, how much respect you'll get
in
society. Sadly,
yes.
People ask you what you do so they can determine how much respect they should give you.
In fact, immediately after asking what your name is, that's what they ask. What do you do?
So what do you do?
What do you say you do, CT? What do you do?
They want to quantify you.
What do you do? Qualify even.
Yes, it's like what, and what you do means. One, what job do you actually do? What qualifications do you actually have? And the one they really want to ask first, but it's rude, they can't ask is how much do you actually earn?
So they gauge.
Yeah. When you tell them the job, they can more or less figure. Yes. And then they'll ask, so in that, what position do you hold? You're being quantified. It is very much an integral part of the way Kenyans view themselves. And that is why, for instance, you'll find titles are attached. You are not just so-and-so. You have
but
to
that
be.
Social stratification exists even in the animal world. You'll find, there's the silverback gorilla, and
but that's human. That's the human classification of animals. We are attaching our value system to them. It is important that people are acknowledged for their achievements and even for the things that they have done. Nothing wrong with that.
Which is the only way. I think the sad bit is that we don't have equal opportunities. But in terms of achievements in the world we live in today, I don't see any problem in qualifying people in that sense, other than the fact that some people haven't had the opportunity.
We consider it part of our value system. That's where the issue is. Because you, without realizing, you actually dehumanize a person.
You're worthless.
Yes.
Rufus in Nakuru, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good morning. Fine, we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I'm also good, and I'm glad that you have this program on air.
Thank you.
I kind of stopped listening to the radio a long time ago, but now I do.
Welcome back.
Brilliant. Fantastic. We brought radio back to you.
Yeah, you did. Now, I want to contribute about this issue of joblessness and employment. I think, in my opinion, there are two things that I've come to realize. That number one is the work ethic, which is not taught in schools. People are not prepared well to come into the job market, because I believe I've not been employed by anybody for the last 14 years. I've found my way. I've been in the building industry doing some jobs. I've been also a tour guide, and I'm able to to support my family. Now, the problem I see is that we are not preparing our kids to get out of school to be self-reliant. That is number one. Number two, there is what is called capitalistic greed, like in the banks, surely. You know, when they want to increase the interest rates and they're still making money, they want to sack people and they're still making money. And I also think that the way we have grown to expect to get easy money, you know, like you don't have to work so hard to get something. And then there's this other cadre of people that the jobs they do are considered lowly. Let's say the masons, carpenters,
blue-collar jobs, yeah.
Yeah, blue-collar jobs. They are considered lowly. And a long time ago when I used to be in construction, I used to have like 5 numbers of plumbers. If right now I need a plumber, I have to call 5 people so that they can find me a plumber. So there are these jobs that people do not want to do. And the reason they don't want to do them is that we have not prepared our kids to do them. So that is the reason why we realize that you may be unemployed, but you can have a job. If I want to do something in my house, if I want to make a shelf, I don't have to call a carpenter. And I have never been a carpenter. I just taught myself. Yeah, so I think joblessness is kind of, I don't know what I can say, but we need to change the way we look at things. Our corporate bodies need to change the way they look at things. And as you said earlier, is that if I don't have a job, where do they expect to have a customer, to get a client from? Yeah.
Indeed.
Interesting one. So he says employment
Thank you very
is
much,
not
Rufus.
the only route out of education and into the workplace. You don't have to look for employment, and maybe our institutions aren't sufficiently preparing people to come out and be self-sufficient. And he's talking about self-employment or going into a practice or...
He's right, because you see, our dignity has for a long time been attached to white-collar jobs, not just work. So the sort of work that could also earn you a living, in many cases, it may exist, but in other cases, you have to create it.
But with these blue-collar jobs...
Yes, they are blue-collar jobs.
You know what I'm going to say, right?
In the UK?
In the UK.
In the UK and also in Sweden.
You have Sweden comes in for a lot more advanced notions, such
for instance,
as
in the UK.
actualization and so on. In the UK, with a blue-collar job, so for instance, a plumber, you have people who leave Oxford and they then have jobs in these intellectual circles or whatever Oxford can afford you, and they leave to become plumbers because plumbers are so well paid. They're on £90,000 a year. We're talking about 120 million, 12 million shillings a year, isn't it? About a million shillings
a month.
A million shillings a month. That is a plumber. And it's because people are willing to pay that much because they realize actually a lot goes into plumbing. Now, we're not willing, we as the consumers are not willing to pay. We will cut corners. I've suggested this before, where there's guilds and there's actual associations and licensing where these blue-collar jobs signed up to, and you can only take somebody who is licensed in doing XYZ, and then there's a minimum wage, and we increase that pay because plumbers are very highly paid in the UK. You have Oxford graduates who leave their jobs to train to become plumbers. Now, what model have they adopted there that we don't have here? Whether it's to do with societal attitudes or whether it's to do with structures that come around being a plumber and the qualifications you then need. Of course, there's also things like, which we've introduced here, piped gas. So you're not going to bring a Juakali guy to come and sort out your piped gas because it can be very dangerous. So maybe it's...
the notion itself is dangerous in this country. Just the notion. Piped gas.
You see fire.
Into housing. Yeah, so how can we look at glorifying or... making these jobs better for the people that do them? Because what happens is, because it's not regulated an industry, any guy can come and
it begins
do
with
this
our education.
work.
Remember we discussed it sometimes back in terms of saying, I was actually saying that we've gone backwards.
Yep.
We had a structure that enabled the very thing you're saying, and it was in place.
Targeted, focused learning and education.
Place, and it catered for this. It was killed.
But that's because of our attitudes and our mindsets as well. You know, parents push their kids to either be lawyers, doctors, accountants, engineers.
The education. If the education system emphasized the things that you're saying, it would be an even keel with academia.
So you're
and all
talking
the
about
things.
more vocational courses as opposed to...
Yes. In order for us to see...
on TVET.
In order for us to see the physical manifestation, there has to be a significant mind change or a mind shift. And now the question comes into play that how then do we make this happen.
We lobby, isn't it?
Yes.
My friend.
We
You're
start
always
to
lobbying.
we start to have conversations about it. If we don't talk about
Who is going
these
to
things,
lobby then? Since we love lobbying.
We are lobbying.
Oh,
You
we
can
are
lobby.
lobbying.
It's lobbying. And lobbying, you know,
lobbying.
people think that
It's
a lot
no
of times,
solution to
a lot of
everything,
times,
There's a specific
Oh,
set of
the lobbying
different
goes a
now
long
for
way.
Tibet.
it is one way to get things into the minds of other people by having the conversation. If we keep quiet about it and not talk about it, you're not going to get it into people's minds. You
know,
won't.
Kenyans are some of the most law-abiding people I know of on this planet. Okay, we now have a curriculum-based. This is new education system.
CBC.
Yeah, that one. Okay. It's not as though the parents were given this huge choice. Okay, there's discussion about it, but it had been decided, and they will fall in line, and children will undergo that system. If industrial education, TVETs as we call them, if these things were actually introduced, parents would embrace it. But it's not as though they don't understand it, but you consume what is made available
To you.
Yes, that's how it is. If it is made available, there are parents who will easily
Hold that thought. Let me bring in James. James, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, James.
How are you?
Good.
And thank you again for surprising us with different topics. Whatever you get them every day. Now, city today, I think, is making a lot of sense.
And on other days, my brother.
Even other days, but today, I think
Thank you so much, my brother.
But and yesterday you brought in a guy. I think he was a politician yesterday.
Yes.
And I was so annoyed when he told Jerry that Jerry should understand the quality of leadership. I felt so offended.
Why didn't you
should
call
have
it and
called
tell
in.
him?
Yeah?
You should have called in.
I tried to call, but you gave him a lot of airtime.
We did. Too much.
You are very right. We did.
You gave him a lot of airtime. Anyway,
Right.
Today's topic, I think, is very interesting. There's somebody who was saying about blue collar jobs. Yeah? People fight for that so much, like white collar jobs. They want to be in the office every day. Again, I think if you look at our city around these posh estates, like the immediate neighbor is a slum. These are the people who have traveled to Europe and places like that, and they know very well that a plumber is supposed to be paid very well. But this plumber is the one living in the slums, just next to the comfort, because they don't want to pay them well. We have very selfish people. And I think, again, in terms of government being the major employer, there's a time back I went to Times Tower. You find those people who are there in those tellers. They are old wazes and old mamas, the age of my mom. It was so unfortunate. They were discussing about a Rorashia they had attended somewhere in Moranga, and I was waiting to be served. We are in the era of technology. Somebody is there very slow, he cannot cope with technology, poking one letter on that keyboard at a time. But we have so many youth graduating who are innovative and can cope with that kind of technology. And we are still employing those old people there.
But
who have
that's
nothing
age
new
discrimination. Should older people not have access to jobs or the
No,
job
I
market?
think we should train our population to spend wisely and to invest wisely, nothing to be emotional about it. If you have hit a certain age of retirement, we tend to think you've been saving money. Now go out there and do other business. Now
give other people an opportunity.
You give it to other people.
It's like
You
a
feel
conveyor
we have
belt, keep it moving.
Yes. We have like so many boutiques around the city owned by young people, and I think it should be reversed. Those boutiques should be owned by our mothers, because now they have retired. They only need somewhere to sit down and do something before they wait and die, because death will catch with them eventually. But this job has been taken over by young people. It should be reversed. You cannot tell us we need to move fast, whereas people on the steering there, they are very slow. They are not innovative. I think we are headed in the wrong direction.
Asante sana, James. Have a good day.
Makes some really interesting points in terms of we're not willing to pay the blue collar jobs, and it comes back to something you were discussing earlier, CT, with regards to social responsibility. Now I'm drawing lines or parallels with individual responsibility. So with social responsibility and the idea of banks making all these profits and still laying people off, it actually boils down to us as the individual members of society, because we're still willing to bank with those banks. So for instance, if there's a product that's manufactured in a factory where people are mistreated, you won't find us voting with our feet as Kenyans and boycotting that particular product. Similarly, as Kenyans, we're looking, when we're employing, whether it's house help, whether it's a fundi or a gardener, you're looking to get the best deal possible in terms of actually not pay the guy as much. So it comes down to our attitudes for these jobs. We're not paying. He said people have been abroad and they've seen how much plumbers make. But when he comes to your house to fix anything, you will negotiate and bargain with him, and you'll pay him something that you would have spent last night eating out and drinking for a month's salary. So you're paying your maid maybe 10,000, and you'll easily spend that out in a night. So it's maybe the value we place on these people as individual members of society that we need to reconsider.
Sure, but I think we can also be just looking at a broader aspect of this, we can be very deliberate, as government, because when you talk about the rights of young people to actually get into the job market, I think we can be deliberate in our placement, at least to put them out there in terms of what happens. And I'm going to draw parallels between this and what happens in Nigeria with the NYSC, which is the National Youth Service Corporation. National Youth Service Corps. And what happens is that you are required to have gone through the system by law. If you intend to work in the country, you should have an NYSC certificate. But what they do for you is that you are then, after you graduate from university or you've graduated from a tertiary institution, you are now placed kind of like an internship, and then you're paid by the government, but you have a job and you earn something right after you have finished this level of education.
Is this for everybody?
Yes, it's if I were to go,
it's mandatory.
It's mandatory. If I were to go and work in Nigeria now, they would ask me where my NYSC certificate was if I was going to work.
Do you have one?
How much would you buy it for?
Get out of here.
It's Nigeria.
It's not. It's
What's
not
the
like
going
the
rate?
UK.
It's not like the UK.
I don't. When I make these comparisons, let me make something clear. When I make these comparisons, I'm not saying one is better than the other. These are, it's the some experience of my life where I've lived with two different societies. But although I do say Sweden is definitely more advanced than us, as in that country has self-actualized. We're still at food and shelter on
Just
that
like
hierarchy.
When Nindu is telling us about Nigeria,
We can actually be deliberate in how we do this. I know what you were going to do, so I'm just going to circumvent that right there. So I think we can be deliberate. Of course, NYSC has its holes, and there are different things that can be plugged and made better. But what it does is that it introduces you to being able to be in the working environment and being able to earn something, and then knowing that you could go further and get a job through that. And it's not necessarily just for public, because you have NYSC being placed in public and private institutions, private corporations, getting a job, working for 9 months, earning something that they pay you in collaboration with the government, so that you do something. You're not just serving the government for free.
How long have they been around?
Oh my goodness, ever since it's an 80-year-old institution. It's 80-year-old.
Because this could explain why Nigerians are so self-assured in terms of identity. You actually go through a process where you're indoctrinated and socialized, for lack of a better word, but there's actually a system in place that re-imprints your national identity into you as an individual.
And you don't
City.
and you then are not
Would you like
you
to share
don't
your
operate
experience
you don't
with
operate
NYS?
you don't operate in you don't operate in you don't operate where is indigenous to you. You're taken to a totally different part of the country. So you kill two birds with one stone. You get to know what is happening. You get to know a different range of the country. And then you also get to work.
And also the ethnicity factor,
Exactly.
any negative ethnicity is curbed right there by that integration.
The reason I'm asking City is because, City, please tell us about NYS.
NIS came after
NIS?
NYS.
Yes, sorry. NYS came after my time. Yes, it came something like 4 years after I had left high school.
Right.
But what Ndu is talking about existed in this country. You see, when you finish Form 4 and you wanted to go to Form 6, at that level, you could be taken to any school in the country. It was a policy. You could come from Nyanza taken to Northeastern, you went everywhere. Now, with employment, it was the same. When you finished university, for instance, or you finished college, you were never posted, hardly ever posted to where you originally came from. You were posted all over the country.
Get to know other parts of the country.
You were. It was that.
Was that intentional? Was that deliberate?
It was a deliberate policy.
To what end?
For NYSC, it is actually intentional.
They wanted Kenyans to understand Kenya. It was as simple as that. You could serve anywhere. That was the Kenyan way of making Kenyans feel like Kenyans. So you would find, for instance, the district officer in the middle of Luo land from Northeastern Province. What that means is that the people of that particular remote place understand that they are people from Northeastern Province.
They interact with us.
They see this person on a daily basis.
Yeah, there was this terminology, alipigwa transfer. You don't hear it anymore.
Yes.
I grew up hearing that.
People and with civil servants, you were moved around. It was a deliberate policy. They moved you around. So civil servants got to know their country really, really well. And you'd find when they talk about the things they did, it was never in their backyard.
No.
It was always in somebody else's backyard.
And then what happened?
And it made this so-called diversity easily acceptable. Because the people who were being introduced to you from a different community was someone whose role was to actually make your life better. So the issue of differences was not only muted, it was a wonderful diversity. That was our contribution. Now, NYS tried to do, it was purposed for that. But then there was a student riot. And the riot police, remember, riot police, only in Kenya. Not riot quelling, riot police. Okay? Because they had been trained in the military, they knew how to get themselves organized in groups.
The NYS got.
Oh, yes, they did. And before it was helter-skelter, the police would come and people would take off. This time around, the police came and the guys didn't move. And though they didn't move, and somebody said, "Oh, attention," the whole lot of them went, "Rup." At ease, "Vup."
The sound effects are amazing.
Could be weaponized.
They were weaponized. I mean, these guys were emulating what the discipline force were doing. They said, what? That program was scrapped. No. Yet, it shouldn't have been.
The purpose it was serving was
useful,
greater.
really useful, because this NYS as we currently have it would have been bolstered and it would have been a beautiful national thing. The very thing I was speaking about earlier, even with posting, you would see this country. By the time you enter the job market, a place like Israel have a system that is even more interesting. Okay, you go to university after 2 or 3 years in national service. So you enter university really mature. You're not 18, 19. You're in your 20s.
Yes.
By the time you finish universities, you're past your mid-20s. But what they see, for them it's necessary because everybody has to be militarized. But it means that every citizen is trained. So everyone is a soldier. Every civilian is a soldier. It's deliberate.
Yes.
When we say the government must do, and you say we should lobby, I agree. Because the government can. If they choose to, they can.
And if it's going to translate to success, then we must. Success is deliberate. It is something you do deliberately to achieve it.
What our chosen leaders and appointed leaders don't seem to see, that these things help them in the long run.
Absolutely.
They benefit. If you have an economy that is thriving and doing well, and you're inclined towards stealing, there'll be more to steal.
All right. Say your goodbyes for the weekend, Ziti.
Have a good weekend, all.
No, I've got more to say in terms of solutions.
In 30 seconds.
I think it's important that we do restructure, both psychologically and in terms of formal structures. We restructure the blue-collar jobs. I think there's great opportunities, and this is where we can be absorbing